These were on the 11th, so that's the next set, okay. So are there any other changes to the minutes of December 9th? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve as amended?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as amended for December 9th.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further comments? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstentions?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Abstain, okay. So let's see, we are one down, so that would be 701. All right, and then we have the minutes of December 11th. And I did not find any changes. Chris has page 5, line 35. Line 35. He said that Mr. Piscucci commented that he used to own a residential and commercial air duct cleaning company, so he wants to insert commercial air duct in there.
What page was that?
It's page 5, and he says line 37. He believes this process should only be done if a lot of dirt is in the ductwork, but I believe there is little, if any, dirt in the ductwork, as the modern air handlers and filters are doing its job, keeping the ducts from getting dirty. So I can forward that to you, because that's a
Thanks.
lot of words.
That's fine.
So, just some corrections to what he said. Are there any other changes to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept them as amended?
I wasn't here.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Is there a second? It's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And abstain.
Aye.
So there's 2 abstentions, so that would be 602. Correspondence, this had quite a bit of correspondence. Obviously, the 2 sets of minutes we just had. We had special education costs history, vocational education, transportation history, and repair and maintenance history that came from Bill Spencer. Jody, I think the last name's Callahan, had some information on vocational education, and there were 2 files attached to that, which was, I don't remember the names of the files. Vocational bus schedules and CTE student data. We had Frank Byron forwarded some answers to some of the questions that the committee had on the town warrants. We had a question about whether the school district could share their oil cost projections with us, and they are not able to because it's proprietary due to the fact that they belong to this consortium and pay for that information. There was an audit question, which we did receive a copy of that, and then that's it, the 2 sets of minutes. So that is what I have for correspondence. And I'm not aware of any other. Getting to school business, just to bring the committee up to date on the changes we have voted on to date. We have made reductions of $367,932 for the accounts that we have reviewed.
One more time.
$367,932. And those account for all the reductions that we have been through the last 2 weeks. Tonight we are reviewing special education and curriculum. So, Brian, do you want to introduce who we have here tonight?
Yep. We'll start. Who do we have? Well, obviously, Dr. Cochran. I'm sorry? I said, so we asked him to introduce who's here.
So
It's been a long day already.
Yes, it has. We have Julie Heon.
Okay. And special services is
I'm sorry.
Devin Bandersky.
Devin.
Sorry.
Welcome to you
I'm
both.
going to say Dr. Bandersky, but we'll have to wait another few years before that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Wait now, by the way.
So it's special services is first. I'm going to assume we're going in order. So what we've been doing, just so you know, is if you want to just start out in general and just talk about any changes, anything different, anything you want to draw our attention to, you know, just kind of give us a general overview if you want to, and then we kind of go page by page and just if there's anything you want to point out there or questions the committee has.
Okay, perfect. So I guess first I'll start with, I don't know if your printouts have 272, which is conference workshops.
Yes.
Reimbursement, okay. So I'll start with that. So there were two requests that was put in there. One of them was $10,000 for math and reading training for special education teachers. And the other was $25,000 for assisting with college courses for special education teachers to obtain certifications in learning disabilities, emotional disturbance, and intellectual and developmental disabilities. Those are critical shortage areas, and they're a requirement of IEP teams when we have eligibility determination meetings. We have to have somebody that's certified in the area sitting around the table. So we definitely have a shortfall when it comes to those certification areas in the district. So there has been interest expressed from staff to obtain those. There's different cohorts for colleges and universities that have been established that move at quite a fast pace in order for teachers to obtain that certification. So I'd like to be able to have the funds to move them through the program to get those certifications that were needed. So that was one piece. And then the other one is math and reading training. It's to really build upon the skills that our special education teachers currently have and get advanced training in specialized reading programs and math programs to further benefit students with educational disabilities.
So,
Just a quick question on
Sure.
the 25,000. That wouldn't fall under the course reimbursement that we already have there.
It does. For example, with the LEA, by contract, we put in $360 per teacher into that fund, and it can be used. It guarantees teachers basically one course a year. Sometimes they can get partial reimbursement on the second course, and the reality is we've advertised, you know, for special education positions the 3 years that I've been here with preference for LD and EH, and never even been able to, I don't think, interview anyone in 3 years.
Occasionally there might be, but it's a critical shortage area. So
And
you're
I don't think
seeing,
have we had a hire with either?
we've had one hire.
Okay.
So we
So-
have,
The mix of certifications that we need in order to offer it has been critical. So what we need to do is basically speed up the rate at which we take some of the internal people and get them those certifications. The number of courses, Devin, that it would take to get your EH cert or your,
depending upon, one of the colleges that's doing it is about, if they already have their master's, it's about 7 classes. And they move
so
through
that would be,
about
that would be
3.
7 years to generate somebody. So if we can get them to take one course through the union reimbursement, but be able to support them more, then we should be able to get somebody in, like a couple of years.
Well, how did you arrive at the $25,000?
We looked at the thought process being about five people or so going through, and I think it was 3 courses each. I'd have to look at my math, but we took one of the, I think it was probably Granite State College, and the cost for one
With the
course.
5 and taking 3 courses?
Yeah,
Is that realistic?
to take 3
Is it
courses.
realistic that that will happen?
We're hoping.
We have teachers that
To
express
take that many
interest.
courses, yes. We have people now.
We have people that are interested, and there's definitely the pace in which some of these programs go is reasonable in which it can be done, absolutely. But we need the funding in order to move it forward.
I have a question too.
actually,
Sure.
Ray had a question.
This is more for Dr. Cochran, and this is actually one we've talked about before. Is there any, if we put this investment into these teachers and it's an area that's critical need, is there any kind of binding in their contract that keeps them employed here for some period of time after that? Or is this just, we're going to train these people and then they're going to
The
leave?
contract doesn't speak to it, but I know the board has discussed this in general in the past. And it strikes me that this situation where we're going above and beyond the contract would be the normal sort of situation where the board would sit down and say, do we put in a clause that says if you do not teach upon completion X years, then you would have to reimburse if you left. So I would expect that the board would have that conversation. But in the end, it'll be the board's decision if we just.
It's a significant
No,
investment.
but I remember the discussion also with the school board was, we don't want to hold someone back with the fear that they leave. I mean, as far as these individuals have already pinpointed that are already interested in these courses, that.
Example is your IT director, he got his master's degrees and he's leaving. The police department, we don't train an officer on the town side that doesn't sign a contract to stay here for a period of time. Correct. So it's not unrealistic that that could be done on both sides of the aisle.
Mine was the same question, is if we're investing that kind of money, what kind of obligation would they have? I mean, it improves their marketability, it improves their value, and.
They also improve their value to the district, and that's what we're looking at.
As a taxpayer, if I'm making the investment, I would like to have some protection for that.
If we can retain them, that's great, but there's nothing currently in here. Okay.
And my question was, if these are required for IEP meetings, how are we meeting these now?
Yeah.
Right now, I'm certified in LD, so the middle school doesn't currently have anybody certified in that, so I sit in on all of the meetings, referral meetings, eligibility determination to take care of that. We have a reading specialist at the elementary school that's LD certified, so she sits in on those meetings, and we have one person here that can sit in on it. But sometimes it's a scheduling nightmare. We might not have somebody available. For EH, we have one staff member here that's certified in that area, so we might borrow that person, or we have to contract with another district to lend us somebody for the meeting so that we have the appropriate people.
That's what I was kind of wondering. If we're contracting out, is there a line that we would see a reduction in then in the future to have trained in-house people?
We don't have a specific line for that. The one that we've had to contract out with is for intellectual and developmental disabilities, and last year it was one meeting. So we just, paid that under professional services, I think it was, to contract with somebody. But it is a need for the teachers to have. So it's not something, I mean, we manage with what we have right now, but, for the special education teacher, let's say here, to be sitting in on meetings for other students that aren't on their caseload takes them away from direct service time. And then, the meetings that I sit in at the high school, in the middle school. So it was that thought process, and the fact that any positions that we've had, we haven't had anybody that has really come forward, at least this time around, with LD certification or EH already there. It's general special ed, most likely paired with elementary ed is sort of what we're seeing in the applications.
I have another question. Would this be a one-time expense, or would we expect to see 25,000 in next year's and the year after until we're up to speed with the need?
There's going to be funds in for next year because they're not all going to get through what they need to this year. I think if we can get 5 through in the district that have certifications in those areas, it would put ourselves in a better place. Do I see having all of our staff go through that? Probably not, but I think having essential members at each of the buildings.
No, I understand.
Budgetarily, Devin, you're looking at probably this year and next,
This year and
possibly
next.
having some finished within 2 years. So there would be no reduction in cost this year because we still have to contract out. But if we had that sum in for 2 years, some people, if they're moving very aggressively, would finish. Some might take a third year. Quite honestly, if they want to do this on the 7-year plan, it's not in our best interest to
Right, so
select those
overall,
people.
we're looking at $50,000 to $75,000 for that line item over the next 3 years, just so we understand.
Any other questions?
So if I calculate that out, that's 7 people at 9 classes. You said $360 a class roughly?
Sorry?
the classes, the cost per class?
No, it's anywhere from.
$2,000?
It's anywhere from, one of the places does on the size of the cohort. So the more people they have signed up in the cohort, the cheaper the course. So the cheapest it goes is about $1,000 for the class, but it's as expensive as $1,500 to $1,600, depending upon the size.
Yeah, she said her estimates were 5 people taking 3 classes, is where she came up with the
Yeah, the
25,000.
360 is part of the union contract.
Yeah, but if it's $1,000 a class, right, 3 classes,
Potentially.
potentially, but even if it's 1,500, right, you're still at less than $25,000. You're still at closer to 20,000.
Yeah. Even if you're taking the 2 lines at the top that are $1,000 apiece.
Well,
Right? Am I
if
doing that
5
correctly?
people take 3 classes each, that's 15 classes, so divided into 25,000 is about $1,600-$1,700 on average
A class.
a class.
Okay. So if the max is 200 or 1,500 class, the max, right?
The
that's-
max $1,500 to $1,600. So if that's what we end up paying, that's the amount that would be needed.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, we all set with questions there? Okay, 330 professional services, there was a decrease in that account overall. There's just a discontinuation of services for some students. I don't know if anybody has any particular questions within professional services? No. Okay, 332 tutoring services. There was an increase there, but we have, this is our first year with students attending charter schools, students with educational disabilities, so we're responsible for providing all the services. So we've had to contract out to provide services to the school, so that's why there's an increase in that line.
Do you have a contract for 15-7?
For
You just said you contracted some.
the tutoring for the students at the charter schools, we've hired somebody that we are paying to provide the service,
Okay, and that is $7,500?
roughly. Yeah.
How about the rest of it? I mean, all I'm looking at is this account, and we typically haven't spent a heck of a lot in it. And all of a sudden, we're up to $15,000.
Right, so the difference is that there's students in out-of-district placements that we've been, that we'll be doing tutoring for extended school year. And then services for our students in charter schools. So that's why there's an increase there. It's not something we've had in the,
Let me back up. Tutor for, what is ESY stand for?
extended school year, so it's summer programming.
Okay, 2 of them, $6,700. Is that a given, or is that a guess, as how much it's gonna cost?
That's going on, it's typically about $75 an hour.
Yeah.
And depending upon the number of hours.
But is the number of hours variable?
It's dependent upon the IEP team decision.
Right.
So I had to look at what has been established.
Mhm. And have we been doing that in the past?
We did it this past summer. We provided
Past
tutoring.
summer, okay.
Yeah.
How much have we spent on this line item?
I'm sorry?
How much have we spent on this line item this year?
I have no idea. I don't have that information with me.
I have to pull up their PDF report.
I didn't bother looking at it, but we've been doing, this is the first year we've done this?
For providing services to students at charter schools, yes.
No, not the, forget that, I understand the charter school, I'm talking the other line items here.
For the summer programming, we provided tutoring this past summer.
And how about last year?
The summer before, we might have for one student.
Okay. And tutoring for services by court order, $1,500, that's a guesstimate?
That's a guesstimate. That's something that we've had in there.
Again, all I'm looking at is the 15.7 a max you think you're gonna spend, or are there variables in there? That's all.
There could potentially, I mean, the amount of time required for a student could decrease, so we're going to spend less, but it could also increase, so we're going to
Goes
spend more.
both ways,
Right. Legal services, no increase. Haven't.
Just a question on that one. I guess I don't understand when I look at the budget book, and I really don't see any expenditure against this, yet I believe the number. Why is that? I mean, like last year, this says we only spent $745 for legal services.
We haven't needed to obtain an attorney for any special education.
The last 2 years?
Mhm.
And you anticipate a major problem next year?
No, this is the figure that we've had in the budget to cover any expenses that might happen. We don't know what's gonna happen, we don't know if
Okay,
there's gonna be a due process case, so this is the amount that has been in the budget.
understand that, so it's a guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the past 2 years, we've been good, and hopefully we'll continue to be good and not need to expend anything there.
Yeah, we've spent,
I know one year there was a big amount in
it
there.
was 12,000 in 2010, 3,811, 15,5 and 12, 4,713. I'm sorry, 472 and 13. So you had 2 years that were in the $16,000, above the $16,000 range.
And most of them are a lot.
Most of them are a lot less.
And what is the Primex designation for $5,000? That sounds like something specific.
That's for any of our due process cases. There are liability
Oh.
insurance, so they
Okay.
cover a certain percentage. Okay, 569, the tuition. They're all students that I know about at this point in time, with the exception of the anticipated Longview. There's been conversation. So I don't know where that will go in the long run, but in the past budgets, we've put in if there's any anticipated that we're aware of. So that's why that is in there.
Just a question on
Sure.
this year's budget. Are you going to underspend the tuition in this year's budget?
At this point
At
in
this
time.
point, at this point. Yeah,
It's projected
At this
that,
point.
that I will not spend all that we have allocated, because there's change in placements and so forth. Kids move in and out, so, but this is based upon what I know of at this point for the students that will be here next year.
With the one exception that you think might. Yeah, okay. Just one quick, another quick question.
Sure.
RSEC, that's the regional, is that right? What is the school, is there a school associated with that?
It's actually called RSEC.
Yeah,
Yes.
RSEC.
RSEC, yeah. That's the name of it. It has a bunch of other,
It's $51,000.
right, that's the school itself.
Yeah. What,
Do
where,
you remember when?
where is it? Is this the
Amherst.
Amherst? Okay,
Yes.
okay, and,
It's the one that's offered at arm's length through Milford, Montferrat. The schools in that area created a consortium in much the way that Ceresc created a consortium for this area,
yeah.
but they specialize in different things.
On that page, do you have any other questions? I'm not seeing anything that jumps out at me.
And again, on the travel accounts, we're just gonna talk about that at the end.
Yep, that's my understanding. Is that for next meeting? I know, the note said the last meeting, so I'm assuming that's next week then. The 580 and 270?
Not the travel.
No, it's not the January. It would,
Are you going to
I
discuss
meant,
those on Thursday?
I meant Thursday.
Thursdays.
The end
So
of this week.
Then we'll need to add that to the agenda for Thursday.
Yeah. Is that still on track, the 580 and the 270?
The 272?
Yeah.
Remember to save me if you want.
What was that?
We can discuss it this evening if you like.
Okay. All right. We'll do that after curriculum.
Page 3, do you have any questions?
Page 4? Page 5? Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. So, 330 professional services on page 9. Is there something that's,
What account you looking at?
330 professional services?
Yeah, that one's good.
Oh, it doesn't look like we spend a whole lot. Is there something that went up this current year? Or are you just carrying what was budgeted for the?
The ESL interpreter? Is that what you're looking at?
It says professional services, line 330 on page 9, and it's budgeted at 14.2, which is the same, but we haven't spent that in previous years.
Well, we've only spent $987 so far this year on this line.
And so I'm just wondering what, where did these come from? And it says outside evaluations, psych therapy, student family beyond, which we can provide in school, counseling services for out-of-district students, and home-based collaborative counseling. And that one sounds specific for an LMS student. That one sounds specific, but is that?
The one above, there was a student out of district that had services added in, so that's new going into this year and next year. And the outside evaluations we've always had because they pop up, whether it's we have to pay for a neuropsych or an auditory processing evaluation. There's things that come up routinely throughout the year, so that's where that would come from.
And is the home-based collaborative counseling, is that a recent addition too?
No, that was in place last year.
So if,
Looking at my-
I was gonna say, Bill made some comment that only 900 and something's been spent so far. When would that be billed? I mean, would we not have received a bill yet? If it's something that's currently happening.
That nothing has been paid so far this year.
Yeah, 900.
I can look to see where the bill is, but I know the services are being provided.
The budget report we got as of December 4th had $987 spent in this particular line with another $866 encumbered for a total of $1,853 spent and encumbered for this line.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
the
I can
December
tell you, we do have some outside evaluations that are in process, so we will have bills for those. The home-based collaborative is being provided, so I can look to see where the invoices are, as well as the counseling services for the out-of-district student.
Hold on a second here.
I mean, if it's happening, that's fine. We obviously haven't got the bills yet, but I guess that's what we want to know, is that it's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's the write-up, the explanation's the same thing we had last year, word for word. And this, I think, falls in the same category. You don't really know what it's going to cost you. It's going to be depending on what the services are required. And so you put in here what you think you need if everything falls in place. And what's happened the last couple of years is you haven't needed all the money that's paid. And that's the real bottom line.
All right, anything else on page 9? Page 10? Page 11? Page 12?
Page 12 is the same thing, 230 professional services. I think it falls in the same category we just talked about in the previous 230. You come closer to spending what you have in there, but you really haven't hit that $48,000. And this year, I think you've got, you spent a little over $12,000 so far this year. And then probably 28, so a total of 41. So, my guess is that's probably going to be a little bit high also, be my guess.
Page 13. Page 14.
Yeah, just one question on this one. I'm back to the Amherst RSDC.
Yeah.
I'll swear in years past, First Student used to take the kids there. Is that wrong?
When they have the availability to, they have. This year, they are not.
Yeah, I know provided doing it this year, but, okay, because I thought in the past it was provided by First Student.
They have, yeah.
Yeah. I've looked at the sped transportation continuously, year after year, including this year, and finally, I think I throw my hands up. I used to think I knew where the money was, because clearly you underspend that budget year after year, clearly.
And there's variability. If the kids
And
come
I
in
tried to
and
figure out
of it.
whether it was the First Student number, or whether it was the individual school numbers or what have you, and I concluded it was First Student, and then all of a sudden I'm saying, maybe it's the other one. So, my bottom line is this is probably overfunded. I suspect tuition is also overfunded. I did send to everybody, I think everybody got this time, just a listing of what we've been requesting over the years and what we have actually spent in transportation and in tuition. And every year, we have budgeted more than was actually used, and there was only one year where it came in close, and that was 2012-13. Other than that, continually, between the two of them, underspending on a regular basis with big numbers.
There's certainly a lot of variability in these lines, so when we build it as if it's going to be an individual bus for
Yeah.
the student that we have and what the cost would be. And then there's other things that come into play. So if we're able to tag on with another district that's going that direction,
Yeah.
then it's significantly cheaper. If we have a student that stops partway through the year, then it's different. We might have to switch providers, so it ends up being a little bit more. So
Yeah, that's why, my take on both tuition, and I don't know what other folks are going to do, but on both tuition and transportation is, I just look for global cut of some number, I don't know what it would be, 50, 100,000. And I wouldn't feel uncomfortable doing that, knowing that we still have $100,000 sitting back in reserve fund if in fact we really get into serious trouble. So when we get to voting in this, that's the direction I'll wind up taking it, rather than saying it, cut this, cut that. So.
I have two concerns, and you'll probably be able to predict what they are. Number one, $106,000 in the contingency fund won't even cover one student if they move in a district. I know we have some space, but if you look back to 2013 actual, that pretty much matches this year's requested budget. So we've actually been there and spent this much money in a single year before. So recognize that we have.
That's what I said, that's the 1 year.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, that is the 1 year in all the years I can think of where it has ever come that close. And I can think of a lot of years.
And I can tell you that, we're not just Devin and I, but I mean, clearly the staff and the administration are working very hard to have students make the academic gains and make use of the services. And it's just the pure unpredictability of students move in, students move out of the district, and you can have, as we talked about before, you can have a $300,000 swing in the space of a week, up or down. Or we've had a week before we've gone up by one student of 200,000 and down by another, and it looks like nothing happened. So
I will tell you that the people sitting at this table that have been seeing those same kind of numbers, we've seen years where the tuition is really, 1 year we really didn't have enough in there, Still didn't touch the reserve fund, by the way, and still paid for it out of the existing budget. So I don't feel that uncomfortable personally. But we're not voting on that tonight. I just want you to know where I'm coming from, honestly.
All right, any other, Ray?
I just have one other question. I noticed that in every group, there's a new laptop, so that I got like, I'm not sure if I missed one or not, but I think I got 8 of them. So is there a,
The laptops the case managers have, that they bring into meetings so that they can't use a desktop because they have to pull up the EasyAP system. They were purchased with our funds, so they're about 5 years old, and they started having issues, so we had to replace some of them at the end of last year, and we've got to round out the other ones because we had some that
so you
were
need
on.
8 of them to,
And it will round out, everybody will be taken care of.
Anything else for special education? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don.
The next section is curriculum.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome.
Same copy you have one?
These are
Yeah. We have plenty of extras.
All right, so what we've been doing is if there's anything you want to tell us about, talk to us about, anything you want to point out specifically, and then we'll just go through page by page.
Great, thank you very much. A lot of what's in these 3 accounts, 22, 10, 12, and 13, some of them are contracted services, especially those in 2212. So if you have questions about those, it's indicated as so much per teacher in both the course reimbursement fund and the workshop fund. And there are some other relatively small amounts in there that I'm glad to answer questions about. So I thought I would focus on the 2210, 640, and 641 accounts. And that's relative to the handout that I provided you. First, and I think Brian talked a little bit about this in my absence. I apologize I wasn't able to meet at the other meeting. What we discussed in the SAU office this year was the idea of consolidating a lot of our textbook funds, but not all of them, into the district account. And the purpose of that would be to have all major purchases. And I've noted here at the top of the page, full class, individual, meaning, a class of 25 or 30, if we're replacing another text, not if we're buying more for enrollment, a whole grade, or in the case of a high school, it's usually for a course. And the purpose of this is so that those funds are all in one place. When I work with the curriculum committees, we know what funds are available, and we can then vet the vendors and the resources that might be best appropriate for the curriculum framework that we have in place. So again, the distinction is that these are replacing whole sets with a new title, a new edition, a new version of a math book or a social studies book, that kind of thing, as opposed to small amounts that would be for lost books, increase enrollment, that kind of thing. Those items will stay within the buildings so that they can manage those. Obviously, those are not only just smaller amounts, but they can manage that a lot better than I can, being the only person in my office for 4 days a week. By having these consolidated, it also allows me to negotiate agreements with these companies on behalf of several schools. For instance, last year, we did a math purchase that involved grades 6 through 8 at the middle school, but also Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 at the high school. And it was decided, after vetting them through our committees and the school board, that we chose the same publisher. So it allowed me to save well over $10,000 on a $63,000 purchase for math materials. And that's fairly significant, and you're able to do that when you can obviously consolidate your purchases. And it also coordinates them better so that we don't have any overlap and that we can follow our curriculum review cycle. Hopefully, we haven't always been able to do that because of the funding issues, so that we give each subject area a fair opportunity to be considered for replacing materials. Okay? I will explain that in the past, some of the numbers that you would have seen by buildings that were actually identified as 641 as being new, it's a matter of definition. I think since Frank and Brian have come on, we've had discussions that when you're replacing a set of math books for another set of math books, that is replacement. That's why we use that term. As opposed to, you will see in the 641 account, there are only a couple of items, one of which is the Advanced Placement United States History, that's wrong, Advanced Placement Statistics course. And that has been adopted by the school board to be a new course. And so we've never had any AP Stats books, so that would qualify as being a 641 new textbook. So the items that you see here on your list, social studies is one of the larger areas that hasn't been addressed for quite a long time. And we had to make some decisions. You'll notice on here that 7th and 8th grade are not on here, and some other high school courses. So we tried to work with the courses that were in most need. The first one, the Advanced Placement U.S. History. That book, as you can see, is 8 or will be 9 years old next year. And the Advanced Placement courses, just for those of you who may not be familiar, are college-level courses that are designed by the College Board, the same one that does SATs and some of those others. And the syllabus, the course outline, is very specific that we must follow. There's an audit process that makes sure we are, so that if the student's course gets on their transcript as Advanced Placement and the colleges see that, and then they offer kids college credit, they will know that we've been certified that we're teaching the students according to the appropriate syllabus. Along with that, they make recommendations, and it depends on the course, 5 to 10 college-level texts, very specific, and they say these are the only ones that you can choose from. These have been vetted and approved by their panel, and so we must choose among them. And our book no longer qualifies for that. By next year, we are supposed to have a new book. And so this is the cost of 30 books. We have had 28 or 30, between 28 and 30 students in that class on a fairly regular basis. As you can see, the law course, those materials are very old, and a couple of key elements there are the updated Supreme Court cases, as well as some other federal laws, and providing students with an enriched experience with better questions. This idea of mock trials is an important component of the law course, where students will actually do research on the laws to defend or prosecute, so to speak, either side of cases in the course. You can see how old psychology is. Grade 5 and 6, this is a great need because they both involve geography. Grade 6 is the world geography, and our books have countries that no longer exist, names that have changed, boundaries that are different, current issues, obviously, that we've been facing around the world. So even though we supplement it, we don't want students having incorrect information in front of them. Gets a little dicey there, trying to explain that. K4. has been what I will graciously call a miscellaneous collection of social studies materials. And what we're looking for is an aligned program. We have a draft of a new social studies curriculum that will be going to the board hopefully later this spring. And we really need the materials that will align with that. For instance, we are fortunate to have a pilot this year, free of cost. And I should explain to you that in the last several years, we have benefited by piloting materials, negotiating agreements with companies, and then in one case, we didn't even purchase their materials. In another case, and if we do, we get substantial discounts. So this year, we're piloting materials in grade 2 that were hot off the press, a strong digital component, but we can't go 100% digital because we don't have one-to-one hardware for our students, but has a strong digital component and is very engaging for the students. And social studies is one, if I may, social studies is one of those areas that often gets neglected. We have all kinds of tests for reading and language arts and math, and we have the state science test. But social studies often gets left in the lurch. In fact, at the board meeting, we were talking about down the road, how could we have some local assessment program for social studies. And so, as you can see here, they've sort of been the stepchild with regard to materials as well. So it would be really important to update those for our students. And I emphasize the word citizenship there because that's really the crux of our elementary social studies program. It's a very concentric circle, if you will, talks about them as individuals when they're in the early grades, then goes to their neighborhoods, communities, builds into New Hampshire, and then eventually the United States. They really get a sense of what kinds of communities at all levels that they are part of. Questions about social studies before I go to the others?
Yeah.
Sure.
339.
Students
339 students.
in grades K through 4. I'm using the projections and adding 5% for enrollment change.
The
Yep.
339 was,
70, 79, 78, 96.
what is your?
For grades 1 through,
I'm looking at grades 1 through 4 at 323, which is what you have down here.
right,
And what's the 16 that you added?
5%. I noted at the
Oh,
top,
it doesn't include kindergarten then?
no.
Okay, that's my question.
I didn't include them in the enrollment. The program that we're looking at has a component, I probably should have added them in, and you're correct there. And what threw me off was that kindergarten was way off to the right.
Yeah.
So I added them in, had them in one time and then took them out another time. We're actually not going to pay for the kindergarten materials if we go with this company. They're sort of part of the package. But it would be good to have that other number in there. You're absolutely correct.
Even though the following year it's a lower number, that doesn't answer the question because you need it for next year.
The projection?
And I'm saying that the following year, there are even fewer students,
Ah,
grades K through 4.
mhm.
But this is for next year, and so
Correct.
we're trying to have enough text there for all of us.
Correct, correct. Yeah, that's the tricky part, when the enrollment changes and we, and,
Well, enrollment at GMS is pretty not tricky anymore.
no, I meant to have enough one year and not another. But given the fact that you have some loss with the little kids especially, but thank you.
I do have a question before we move out of there.
Biology has been a large need, and again, we're in the middle of revising that science curriculum. We're on our 4th draft and close to a final draft there, but that doesn't change the course that's going to remain as biology, primarily for 10th graders, and I only use the 10th grade projection number. I think we would be okay for any students who are repeating the course. We don't often have many repeaters, but there are some. And then we occasionally have a couple of kids who advance into the class. So I think we're pretty comfortable with that. One thinks of science, sometimes I get questions, well, does biology really change? And some of the foundational parts don't, but there is new science daily, and to wait since 2004 is probably not doing a good service to our students.
Can you wait till the?
Yeah, I just got one that
ahead.
fits in here anywhere.
Sure, yeah.
I guess this leads to the piece of me that says, is there any way to go out to bid on these books, or are we always single source manufacturer? I mean, I appreciate that you negotiate a great deal, but the fact is, when you're going back to the same well for any one particular thing, there doesn't tend to be any competition. So when we're going to Common Core and we're supporting this standard that we have, is there more than one textbook that
Oh,
you
yes.
could?
I negotiate with several vendors.
I'm not talking about negotiations, I'm talking about a bid process, because,
Oh.
is there any way to put those books out to bid?
For Science and social studies, there are no Common Core standards for them, so we're still using, well, we're moving towards the next-gen standards for, which will be
Science.
national standards. The board process, and I believe it hasn't changed in quite a while, is that when a textbook is selected or course revisions are made, it goes to Julie's PERT committee. They go through, teachers do the reviews. There's a set of criteria that we use that, in fact, we revised this year. There's 6 or 7 different things they look at and identify the best criteria, the best resource. Price is a criteria, but in essence, most of the time, we look for what's going to best serve the students' needs.
See, unlike New York, California, and Florida, Texas, where they often will, the state mandates what text you use, so they can go to a publisher and not only negotiate price for the whole state, they often get a book published just for them. In this social studies curriculum, for 4th grade, is about state history and geography. Florida contracted with them, and they have a whole program, a whole segment that's just on Florida. We don't have the enrollment numbers and the purchasing capacity to do that. And as far as I know, and I meet with my curriculum colleagues monthly, if not more often, there isn't a consortia that vets publishers for small purchases. Our purchases are relatively small. We certainly should continue to investigate that. But.
So the process really is, we look at the grade levels of textbooks, identify what would be, the sorts of resources that we look at. And if we know what we're going to purchase next year, that's great. But we really don't, because the process isn't completed. So what Julie does is typically finds a benchmark price. And then, so the first time I saw this number, it actually wasn't $80,000. If I recall, it was just under $90,000. And then we look at how much Julie is usually able to save us in negotiations. And by the way, I've never known another district that has been able to negotiate nearly as well as we do. But so the actual estimate of pick a middle of the road, how many do we need by actual numbers, next year's enrollments was 89 and change. And then we rounded it down to 80, assuming that she's going to be able to get the typical discount that she gets when she negotiates with that actual provider.
The other thing that makes it hard is there are nearly, there are 2 vendors, I was going to call them monopolies, but there are 2 vendors who have bought up most of the publishers. You have McGraw-Hill.
You used the right word.
Yeah, thank you. McGraw-Hill, who's bought up everybody, and Houghton Mifflin, that's bought out, or Pearson now. And but they do want to make sales, and we buy through reps, and they are out to make, commission and all of that. So I never budget teacher materials. I never budget all of the ancillary materials that go with them. The value of them, we could lay those out. But again, when we did this $63,000 purchase last year, we got over $10,000 in free materials. That's a relatively high percentage. So, I have confidence in the process, whether or not, we can do this. Let me go through a couple of others here just to allay any questions, and then I want to talk a little bit just about the broader view here of this work. So PE and health has been neglected for some time. We do have a few textbooks, and rather than replace those textbooks, use the chapters we have for both middle and high school, and then supplement with topic level books on, think about the new diseases that we're aware of, that's all part of health. We're trying to encourage all of our students to participate in first aid and those kinds of things. So there are topics that aren't in the book, but that's a considerable savings if you compare to any, you can't get a textbook itself for under $89.95 these days, and many of them, as you see, the college level books are well in the $100+ range. So I think this would be a good value for us. And then English language arts, continuing to build that. We've put in smaller amounts over the last 2 years, and really need to bolster what we do with students reading and writing.
Questions?
Yes, please.
Is there any order or priority on this list, or is this just a random list?
It's not a random list. They're all our highest.
In terms of priority.
Yeah, I would have to go back. If you were going to say to me, what can we live without?
I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, well, when you talk priorities, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If we cut in any of these, then, it's fairly logical that we have to probably cut a whole line because we can't, split the numbers because we're talking about a new edition of a book, even though it's a replacement.
Let me
Sure.
explain where I'm coming from.
Yep.
The total budget request for this particular account is $125,000. Okay, some in the schools and the $80,000. The school portion is $45,000. That's more than they spent. Good
Explain
number
to
here.
me where you mean the school portion?
Yeah, GMS, LMS, individual line items and GMS, LMS.
Yeah.
It's all part of the total account, 640 account. Okay.
Is
So
that the number we came up with, Frank? Today we pulled
It's
those.
right off the project. So.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
so my take is that probably the 3 schools might be overfunded by maybe about $5,000. Okay, my take. Okay. And I would be comfortable with a total number of about 110,000, which would say I'd like to see, rather than 80, I'd like to see 70. And so that would be the approach that I would take on it. Okay?
This, if I could, this number is lower than what we spent last year. And you can't see that because there's a zero in both budgeted and actuals for last year because.
Last year, 13, 14?
Right. FY15 budget and the FY14 budget.
FY14 budget, you spent $98,000 in total.
That's right.
Right, I was talking about as listed in the 2110, so.
Sorry?
okay.
I'm sorry?
No, I hear what you're saying. I was referring to the number in the 2210 line, but you're adding them all up, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm just looking at
Yep.
the total what you're spending and what we spend, and I know, looking at what you spent in the past, you haven't done a heck of a lot in replacement. I think only 1 year where you, 13, 14, you spent $62,000 basically. on replacement. And so all I'm saying is, you wanted 80,
Right.
I'd offer 70, I'd offer 5 less at the school, and that's the way I would approach this, and let you figure out how to handle it. That's just me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we can do is try to come back, tell the teachers and the students, we'll try next year.
Well, the second question is, you must have, the following year, you'll have a similar type of list, I assume.
Yes, because we have a curriculum cycle identified for all the subjects. I will tell you that we would expect, I can't speak to the building levels because you don't know how many they're going to lose in any given year, and we try to, be as reasonable as that.
It's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, that's true. But the prices of things are now higher, so you can't replace as many.
And there are
of them.
fewer kids there, too. So-
That's true. Hopefully, they're the ones that aren't going to lose us.
Exactly.
So we would expect that it would be a little better. The one big thing that we will need to look at, even though, and I know it says English language arts here, and that's kind of for a different purpose, we really will need to look at grades 1 through probably 6 maybe 7, but probably 6, in terms of a major anthology. We have the Harcourt Trophy Series that was bought in 2007. And now with increased requirements for the literature that are in there, in other words, with this money, you don't want to buy the younger students separate poetry from, informational text, reading about birds and all that, and have the skills and grammar all embedded. So that will be a major request. The others will be probably even more minor than this. So the number would probably be about the same, at least for one more year. And I know you know this, but I'll state it for the record, that big hit occurred in this area back in 2010-11 with when we lost almost $1.5 million. And I know you know that. And so just like everybody else, we're trying to recover from that and do justice to the students in terms of the materials that are available. The other thing is that's a really important point for me is that I spend a lot of time, hopefully, working with the teachers on instruction. This year we worked all of August with 75% of our staff coming in outside of the school contract on instruction and how to teach, how to continually improve. We have very good teachers, but they always want to improve. And we're writing instructional units against our new curriculum. And so if we don't provide some of these upgrades of materials that are consolidated, you have the readings, you have some of the assignments, not all of them, but a majority of them, and the digital component, which is what really draws kids, and you can go out and get information that may not be in the book today, you can get that tomorrow. Otherwise, and this is what's happening in language arts, our teachers are scrambling every day to say, okay, I need this piece of reading here, I need to pull out this spelling and this grammar and whatever. And when this district made that purchase of the Harcourt materials back in 07, 08, the rationale was to help teachers do a better job at what they're doing and not put their energy in an area where we'd rather have them spend more time and emphasis with students. And so that's the rationale between
So let me,
our decision.
my concern, and I think the concern of everybody here, is we're currently operating under default budget.
Yes.
Okay. The increase that we've seen not your fault, but the total increase would suggest we're going to be in default next year unless we do something about it.
I
And if we go in
understand.
default next year, you're not going to get this anyways. So we're trying to look at ways to get things taken down to a point where the budget is acceptable, and then you'll get most of what you want.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not
I
that
just
they're-
wanted
not
you.
that they're trying to cut it
No,
at all.
but I felt it was really important that you saw
We
what
wanted to
our
see this.
highest priority needs are. And so when you make a decision, you know what you're making a decision about.
Yeah.
You have the specifics.
This was very helpful because to see 80,000 suddenly crop up and why, it does, now I understand. In previous years, we would do the curriculum review cycles, replace all English, replace all math, but it was in other places in the budget. So that's why this stuck out as not really understanding where it came from.
Sure.
This helps because obviously it's mostly social studies. It doesn't sound like it's a full curriculum review, but certainly reviewing either specific grades or specific classes at the high school. And so now I guess that helps me understand it's a slightly different philosophy than what was done before. So I do, this really helped me understand what was being budgeted and requested. So thank
And
you.
that's not to say that I personally would like to go back to the regular review cycle, but because of what's occurred in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, the committees had to take the highest priorities and couldn't say, let's do all social studies and neglect this. There are 2 science areas, there's this one and another, but we chose this one over the other one. PE and health, is often some of these arts and special areas are forgotten stepchildren in the process. So we didn't want
Exactly,
that to
things like
happen.
music and art, and you're exactly
Yeah.
right. I can't even tell you the last time some of these have been reviewed. It's been, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So they are neglected. Thank you.
A couple
You're
of questions from my side, if I may. Is there any resale value to our current texts? I mean, I know some of them are quite,
Actually,
dated.
not a lot of them, once they get beyond 5 years.
Yeah.
But we had some materials that probably in retrospect, people would have bought different things a while back, 6 years ago or so. And so we actually were able to recoup some funding, and we spent that on replacement materials last year that had not, when the budget had been exhausted.
So there could also be some unanticipated revenue with the resale if these books are replaced again?
Yeah, I mean, that was $250, $300.
Oh, it's
And,
really
yeah,
low.
and we had, well, we did some cleaning. We had found books that were 20 and 30 years old, and teachers had started to do copies or, find materials in very creative ways. And we tried to sell as many as we could. We even looked to see if any charitable organizations might be interested. I've done that in other districts. But there isn't, unless something's relatively new and a district just says, oh, we're going in another direction, and goes away from them in 3 or 4 or 5 years, there isn't a ton of resale. That's a good question, and we do try.
Thank you. The last two items on your sheet here for PE Health and English Language Arts, just
Yeah.
questioning the numbers a little bit. When I add up all of your numbers, at face value, it's exceeding $80,000. It's closer to $85,000, right? And a big variable there is the last two items here.
Yep.
So just curious how you're driving at $2,800 and about $10,000 for those two.
Well, I used some of the higher numbers, and there would be some shared materials within that. We have a list of prospective materials that come to that amount. Again, as we've discussed before, we can't pick vendors and exact titles until we know what funding is available. There's a lot of energy that's put into that. And so what I did with the committee is to look at where some of the holes were in those. It's primarily informational text and some poetry throughout our curriculum. Those are new areas in our curriculum that has major emphasis. So I could buy a poetry book in some cases for, an average amount they range from at $29, whereas a book, one of the titles in the lower grades, paperback or permabound, which we try to buy, you might be able to get for $7.99. So it's a combination of lots of materials at different grades.
So when I look at this, is it true that, you're anticipating the purchase of 1,405 books for English Language Arts across the spectrum of cost?
Not if some books are at the higher end and some are maybe at the lower end. And I put this range in hopes that all of the publishers annually raise their prices on May 1st. And they do it because a lot of districts can't buy until July 1st.
Okay.
So given the gaps that we need, that was the price that I came up with that we could live with if we were to fund what we need for those gaps.
Yeah,
And it's not as clean as saying this many textbooks at this price, because when you're buying these books on topics, it varies, the numbers that you buy and so forth.
Yeah, my perspective is, this is the core to what our students are learning from.
Yep.
Right? I'd much rather spend money here than on air ducts. It's my, site work.
Thank you for saying that.
So.
Any other questions on the textbook replacement? All right, so that's kind of page one. Is there anything else on page one that you have questions about? Or that you want to tell us about?
No, I think I mentioned that the amounts for course and workshop reimbursements are contractual. I would point out, I guess, 2213.
What page are you?
My printout is different than yours. I think it's page 2, but don't hold me to that. 2213.
Looks like the bottom of page 2 and page
Instruction staff?
Yes.
GMS.
And then it's the 110 account. Oh, wait, you don't have
No.
salaries here, do you?
No.
We've already
Okay.
gone through the one time.
My account is different. Okay. then this doesn't apply. I was going to talk a little bit, in this category, in addition to these items, are, we have run a mentoring program for several years. It's very successful in terms of helping our teachers new to the district, whether they're new to the profession or coming from other districts in New Hampshire or even out of state. And so when you see that, our people get very small stipends for the number of hours they put in, and it's really a very valuable tool that we have, a program to help our new teachers be more successful. So our students, you know, are it's hard being a first-year teacher in any district, let alone a brand-new teacher, and so the better prepared and the better their questions are answered and more guidance they get, obviously that benefits our students. So when you do see that in salaries.
We already voted on it. I think
Oh,
we-
you did?
I think we cut
No,
it.
that was the one you had questioned.
We cut it.
The numbers didn't back up the state.
They don't have
numbers.
salaries and benefits.
Yeah, we reduced $5,500. We level funded it.
We've overexpended that account every year, and I pulled the money from a couple of grants that we have, but every year those grants are reduced, so we tried to put the actual figure in.
Yeah, we level funded it because it was about 5,500 over what has been typically spent. Our
Because
history.
you don't see the grant money in here.
Okay.
I'm spending an additional 5, 6, 7,000 in grant money because we have had up to 20 or 22 new staff every year over the last 5 years.
And that's what we couldn't reconcile. It didn't make sense that it was being requested at so much higher, and yet the typical spend was much
I
lower.
thought I put that in the note. Yeah, I put excess each year has been covered by a grant, not guaranteed.
Okay,
Meaning excess of what was budgeted.
okay.
Yeah, it wasn't my motion anyway, but it's a 110 series,
Yep.
and we basically set a 110 bottom line anyway, so
All right.
spend it anyway, so. Okay with it.
So back to curriculum. Anything else that the committee has questions on our page one?
No, when we reviewed this earlier, we already had discussions about the course reimbursement numbers. And I understand the contract numbers. We also don't want to spend the contract numbers, so.
Just an update on the page 2, the 270 non-marketing course reimbursement. This is for administrators who have 2 courses in their, reimbursement for 2 graduate courses in their contracts. We used to budget a relatively large figure. If you look back to 14, it was $26,000, and you see only 4 were spent. And so we went through a process of asking people to anticipate the courses that they were going to take. And so we're pretty comfortable making that a reduction. This year, we have had some turnover in administrators, and I'm looking at 2 more course requests. So far, we're going to be over budget on this year,
Over the 13,000.
over the 13. Probably about the same next year. I wouldn't adjust it up, but
So what's
if,
the rate we reimburse at?
I'm sorry?
What, I mean, how do you determine how much? Is it based on like whatever the college chooses to charge? Do we pay the
It's the
state?
UNH rate.
UNH rate?
Well, I'm
Yeah,
looking at
that's-
$1654.99 for the person in this program. We have another person in SNHU, which is $1881 a course for 3-credit course. And so we're probably looking at,
Right, so do we, so if they choose to go to like Harvard Business and they charge, say, $4,000, do we
We-
reimburse
we-
$4,000 or?
we
the
budget-
UNH?
by the contract, we budget for the UNH 4-credit rate.
Okay.
We haven't really budgeted that high, quite honestly.
Mhm.
We've actually budgeted at 2,000 a course instead of the 4 that the contract says, for exactly the reasons that you're saying. That's why we were at one time at 40,000,
Yeah.
and we're spending a relatively low number, so that's why we've done it. So we were at the point now where we've lowered the number consistently enough that, and we've hired a few younger administrators who are now actively working on, finishing certifications and master's degrees, that we're pretty much where we should be.
And it's,
We'll still follow the practice of trying to find out from people as much as we can what we need. If everybody comes back and says we won't need any, and we typically ask before now, so we know pretty much what we're looking at, and it's gonna be about the same. We'll be in the 11 to 14, $15,000 range next year, probably the 14 or 15.
Oh, I like 10.
And similar to the previous question about course reimbursement, because these are non-bargaining here, is there an employment requirement upon completion of a degree? Or can they just, are they subject to,
It's a clause in our administrative contract.
so even though
No,
it
but there's
says
no
non-bar-
retention agreement after they
No.
finish the degree.
Nope.
Alright.
Just for your information, the courts have held that those retention agreements are really unenforceable. Somebody chooses to
Deployment.
leave the district and go on to pursue, there's very little precedent in the courts to uphold those.
And would you really want an
Do you want that
unsatisfied
person in the
employee
district?
I know I had to sign on to that agreement, so, and I felt fine with it, so I was not aware that it was a problem. Go ahead.
Okay.
How do we determine what courses that we reimburse for? Is this up to the individual that's taking the course, or is this something that's guided from our HR director down so that, if I was an administrator and had 2 courses, I could go choose anything I wanted at UNH's catalog?
When I came,
She's shaking her head,
well,
yes.
No, it's vetted through the superintendent. We have a system for both our teachers
That's what
and our
I'm saying.
administrators.
I mean,
somebody
how do
just
we
can't
get,
decide to take a totally unaligned course. I took that responsibility on 2.5 years ago for exactly that reason. If it doesn't align. I mean, in some cases, you got somebody who's working on a master's degree and you have an elective, but I've actually gone back through and looked at the other course. Okay, so that one it's an education course and it makes sense, but you have some theory courses that are required for completion of the graduate as opposed to stuff that may be specifically pedagogy. But no, and with the administrators, if it doesn't align completely, then it doesn't get funded.
All right, any other questions on curriculum? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was nice to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
All right, so at this point then, do we want to talk about 580 and 272?
Sure. Which is your preference? We'll start with 580 since we're talking about it a little bit in special education.
Yep.
Figures that I have, Mr. Markwick pulled out all the 580 lines across the budget. The 35,000, we're hoping that we actually get takers on that. And if you do the number of people that we have times the number of courses times the 1,500, 2 years at that figure would get us the certifications and also be able to get people, Orton, Gillingham, and Wilson reading certified. Those are specialty certifications that are often written in IEPs. They each address a very specific type of learning disability. So if you have an assessment done and it comes back with a particular disability, then, we have a standard IEP practice that says this person should be in a Wilson program.
We're talking
versus
272.
Whatever.
And special services.
We're talking 272, not 580, right?
Conference and workshop
both.
reimbursement.
I'm sorry, you're right, thank you. 272, thank you, Mr. Cutter.
Where are we now?
We're talking 272s.
Yes.
To start.
My apologies, I said 580, but I meant conferences, 272.
272.
And under special education, right?
I'm sorry?
Are you-
That's the one he's referencing.
That's the one he's referencing.
I'm
but I think
referencing the
discussion's more
35,000 in
global.
special ed that we were just talking about.
Alrighty, yep.
So the total increase over this year's requested budget is 37,902. By the time you take away that 35, it's about, 2,900 increase. This year's requested is higher than the last 2 years' actuals. We were running about 25,000. Some of that is, if you look at the very last line, professional training for technology services. So those are not graduate courses. Those are typically very technical webinars. Sit and watch for hours at a time, often take a test at the end. And we're going to need, we are interviewing tomorrow for a new Director of Technology. Hopefully we'll have some news on that in the not-too-distant future. But that, certainly is a need that we're going to have. The other ones do tend, as Mr. Marcus pointed out before, tend to go up and down. Principals tend to have in their contract and tend to go to national conferences. Mr. Lecklider, for example, goes to the one on curriculum and instruction every year. I don't believe that Principal Rothaus went to a national conference last year. The year before that, she addressed an area of where she didn't have much coursework and went to a conference on special education law with Director Bandersky, so targeted to specific aspects of need. I attend the National Superintendent's Conference. It has been more than worthwhile. As with most good professional conferences, some of the sessions are okay, some are good, and some are excellent and worth the costs and the trip all by itself. And so I've been very fortunate, attended twice, and both times had high quality. If I didn't think that it was worth the district's money, I wouldn't go back. But in general, we are up. We're up about $12,000 before the SPED over the prior year. We have had an increased focus in a few areas. Building services training was up a bit. We do typically spend money to get school administrative assistants out to annual conferences. A lot of that is because of changes in state reporting. The federal reporting, especially in the area of human rights, has become tremendously, I'm going to say, burdensome. The reporting requirement in my experience, has doubled in the state of New Hampshire, nationally and federally, I would say, in the last 5 to 7 years. And just staying up with the requirements and the various computer systems used to do the exports to file the reports has become pretty significant. We do have some lines that have been underspent in past years, but generally, the conferences that have been attended, I think, align very, very well with not just general needs, but normally specific needs, and are either about addressing those specific needs or about how to work on school improvement and improve instruction.
Any questions?
So, I mean, you're spot on with the numbers. There's no debating. And the big item is the new special education line item for $35,000, right? I mean, based upon what we were hearing today from the special education instructor, is that her title? Yeah, Devin. I would be a little bit more comfortable with a $33,000 line item as opposed to 35, just based on actual costs that she shared. I think it's important. I'm not going to make any recommendations to cut it at this time. Overall, though, looking at the entire 272 lines, and looking at actuals, I think you're high, right? So what's the right balance? What's the right number, understanding there are new priorities for the district? I came in here thinking it's probably closer to $10,000 after tonight and hearing some of the discussions. I'm thinking maybe it's closer to 5, right, on a total basis. I don't know what other committee members' thoughts are.
Ready to move to the 580?
Okay.
Yep.
I have the last two actuals, 36,872 and 33,359. And this year's requested 44,2, so an increase of about 8,000-ish over the higher of the last two numbers.
I'm sorry, what's this year?
I'm sorry?
What was this year's budget, you said?
44,210 I have.
Is the approved number? Yep.
Oh, for 15, correct? 15,
For-
sorry.
Yeah,
Yep,
yes,
I'm
sorry.
looking at 16. sorry.
And then vote a $3,133 increase. Now with gas prices going down, that's a good thing, but by and large, a lot of this is literally reimbursement for grunt travel. Director Bandersky, if we have students who live in Litchfield who are court-ordered anywhere in the state, she has to go and get there. With all employees, essentially, we reimburse for mileage in and out of district for work-related travel. Some of this is related to conference travel. That's a relatively small piece, and again, there are some things in there that you know, you've got co-curricular travel, some stuff that through, actually the athletics are lower than the actuals for that year. But in general, it is up, bottom line, by about, well, from 36.8 in the 2013 actual to a request for 47 this year. The travel is there. We have more people involved. A lot of it has to do with the increase in services in areas like special education. So, for example, a new law on charter schools and special education indicates that we have to provide special education services for Litchfield residents who are in charter schools out of the district, and so we either have to pay somebody to go deliver the service, or we have to contract with somebody at about $95 an hour to provide the service there. Sometimes it's cheaper to do it one way, sometimes it's cheaper to do the other. Some of that increase is due to those sorts of factors.
I can appreciate the costs go up, and that you know that there's certain travel requirements within the district, and we're reimbursing mileage. Complete sense. You know, again, it's what's the right number. You know, you're at 47, 343, 35 for the recommended budget for 16. We've never spent anywhere even close to that, to your point, right? What's changed in the district year over year? I mean, I don't see any new line items, but understanding that there's a small percentage for cost increases, right? Why the big jump?
Actually, there are some new line items.
Which ones?
Like sending people to this SNUG conference, we have an extra person in there.
You have an
Sending
HR
somebody to
director.
School Dude Academy.
New
They're-
HR director learning the ERP software, and that takes
Oh, I see this one here.
some additional funds, so that's part of it.
Yeah, 1201.
And it's on the West Coast this year, so last year it was on the East Coast, right?
Baltimore's on the East Coast.
And this year, and this coming year, it's where?
I get the impression it wasn't in the
West
best
Coast.
side, the best part of town down in
Palm
Baltimore
Springs.
either.
I can sign you up if you're interested.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'd much rather stay in New England. So you had some increased costs in that, yeah.
Well, that goes to your point. Every year, these national conferences are in different locations. So obviously, it's less expensive to travel to Baltimore from New Hampshire than it would be to travel to Palm Springs.
Understood. But taking that into consideration, in 14 you spent $33,358, right? If I were to level set this at $40,000, that's still a $7,000 increase, right?
I know in.
More than
in-
enough to cover airline tickets.
I know in Dr. Heenan's case, I spoke to her about the fact that she hasn't spent hers, and she's a .8 position, and quite honestly, she didn't want to give up the work time, so she passed on her conference last year. She's flat out, basically, and with the curriculum work that we have, and she's in charge of the teacher recertification process. And she, as much as she wanted to attend the conference, felt it would be beneficial. This year, it looks like she will pass. She did have, we nominated her to go attend a Smarter Balanced workshop that the state paid for in California for about 4 days, so she got some excellent PD at no cost to the district. But that's part of it, so there's one that way. But that's just a case, not of the value of it, but actually it was more important to be here doing the work, given the constraints on her time.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments on 580? All right, we need to move into budget voting now. Technology. On page 1, are there any changes? Page 2. Page
2.
Page 2.
I would move $7,800 from line 440, lease of instructional equipment.
Okay, there is a motion to remove $7,800 from line 440, which leaves,
Second.
That's a lease purchase, a new lease purchase.
so that leaves a new line total of $34,550. And it's been seconded, and you said that's a new lease purchase?
Are we open for discussion?
Yep.
Okay.
I believe those are the rest of the LMS laptops. When we did the lab in LMS a year ago summer, we built in enough capacity that we could replace about 30 of the older machines and still put them on the backbone that we created for the virtualization. So I'm not sure if that is extending.
The issue isn't whether you need it or not. The issue is, from my point of view and many members of the committee, that a brand-new lease purchase belongs as a separate warrant article, so the voters know what they're incurring for the next 3 years. And we went through this with the town, and basically that's the position we took with the town. And, if you bring it in as a separate warrant article, then I'm sure we'd say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a long discussion with the town about lease purchases and whether they should be in the budget or whether they, by RSA, should be on a warrant article or not. So the philosophy of members here with the town was they're not going to approve any new lease purchases that they see in the budget. So you weren't privy to that conversation because obviously that was when we were reviewing the town budget. So that's where this comes from. Lease purchases new lease purchases are things that this committee feels are, by RSA, should be in a separate warrant.
Was there any discussion on this last meeting, last Thursday?
No, there wasn't. And I know that, and Frank's not here, but I know Frank's point of view at the time was that he didn't feel that was a requirement. Legal counsel, the town inquired of legal counsel, and legal counsel said they were within their right to make those decisions. But just,
Provided it was within the bottom line of the budget that was approved.
it was within the bottom line of the budget. So it's, I think it's more of an opinion of this committee and not necessarily a cast in stone by RSA. It was just an opinion that this committee felt.
Probably probably come to year 2. If you get into the default budget, the question becomes, can you add the line item
Right.
in the default budget for the second year of the lease, which has not been approved by the budget, by the townspeople. So to keep it clean, we'll have a straight up and down, yes or no vote by the voters. So then it can be added to the default budget when it passes with nobody contesting the legitimacy of that line item.
And Andrew, to answer your question, yes, this was brought up when we reviewed the budget.
Last week, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I flagged it at the time.
did you? I
Pointed
missed that.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, there is a motion to reduce $7,800 from line 440 rental lease instructional equipment for a new line total of $34,550. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstain? So the motion passes. We are back up to a full complement, so 810. Page 2, anything else? Page 3.
Line 734, what was the discussion last week?
I'm sorry?
The line 734, this is the one-to-one technology. These are new, the 15,000 is new laptops for, I think it was more than 15 teachers.
That's $900 a device.
Yeah, it was $900 a device.
It would probably be in the range of, if it's a standard laptop, that would do about 12 teachers. That would be able to cover all of the teachers who teach freshman classes, so that we'd be able to have them, if we're able to migrate over to the new SIS, we'd be able to equip them with technologies they would need, they would be able to use to be able to rearrange their lessons and infuse more technology into the classroom teaching. So the goal is that if it's a 4-year plan, a year ahead that, so the original plan was to pilot freshmen next year and then hopefully look at the possibility of one-to-one the year after that. So in order to get the teachers where they need to be at least a year ahead. So we would outfit the teachers of freshman classes in year 1, the sophomore classes in 2, junior classes in 3. By the time you do that, there's virtually no one that teaches, only seniors. So really those 3 years would do it. And one of the bonuses of that is that now that you've got a staggered purchase, you create a pretty level funding structure, so you're not buying 48 laptops and then none for 5 years and then 48 again, so.
Didn't we buy a bunch of laptops, though?
Sounds good, but you create a maintenance nightmare, because you're always maintaining a different, you have 4 sets of spares you need to keep, and
I seem to recall a discussion similar to this over I think it was 2 years ago, regarding new laptops for the teachers at the high school. No?
We haven't purchased laptops for teachers in, well, the 3 years that I've been here.
Okay. Thank you.
There was, as the chair points out, the high school opened with laptops, and after a couple of cycles of that, when the budget cuts around 2010, they stopped replacing them. And I think the last of them died in 12-13, and the entire staff has been moved over to desktops. So this would be a first step in that. And as you say, we're trying to build on that level of cost of ownership.
Anything on page 3? Page 4?
I just have a question about school dude. Well, and I'm sorry I didn't ask Kyle, but I don't even think Kyle's the right person to ask. We've been paying for that for a long time, and have we ever seen anything out of it?
School dude?
Yeah, we talked about, we gave Matt Bennett extra money to do extra work in there.
It is our system for all maintenance, repairs, changes, anything. And Matt actually went out and purchased T-shirts for the people that said literally, if it's not in school dude, it doesn't exist. So it is our system for managing everything from purchases to changing, maintenance, the whole piece. I think what you're referring to specifically is the school dude has the capacity to act as your long-term facilities piece. We've not taken advantage of that module, but it is our de facto management piece for all work by support staff and technology staff. We track it. When Kyle reports every month, he reports out the number of request tickets by location and function. And we
Just curious, because it seems like we put a lot of money in there, and I know that we gave, there was money in previous budgets to give Matt Bennett, and specifically Matt Bennett, extra hours and extra money to enter in maintenance,
pretty sure it was.
projected maintenance things out there. I was just kind of curious if we'd ever gotten anywhere with that.
Yeah. We've been trying to get much of that done through the Building and Planning Committee. And we're doing it with free labor and some assistance with Mr. Lynch from the town side. But
He's entering in projected things in maintenance.
the next meeting is going to be in the first Tuesday in January, and we'll be looking at a couple of things at that point in time. That group is also the group that we've vetted the security request in the warrant article that was approved last year.
Anything else on page 4?
I'd like to make a motion on line 531 to reduce the line by $300 to $612.
Okay, there is a motion to reduce line 531 telephone by $300, leaving a new line total of $612. Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, it's been made and seconded.
It's never been spent. They're budgeting $912. We've never exceeded, 571 was the max.
You got the actuals over there.
Since July 1st to December 4th, they spent $142.
There's room, probably more.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of reducing line 531 telephone by $300 for a new line total of $612 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? Okay, motion passes 810. Anything else on page 4? Page 5?
Yeah, I'm not gonna make a motion, but I'll repeat what I said when we do the budget. I don't see any reason why we couldn't spend that $30,000 for the phone replacement by using the reserve fund money that you set aside. And then replace that money with fund balance, which is gonna be there the following year. So you're really washing the money through and taking this out of the budget. But I'm not gonna make that motion unless the board felt that was the right thing to do. And if you guys don't want to do that, that's your choice. But I think you can do it, no problem.
I haven't been to GMS in a while, but last time I was there, the phone system was sitting on a garbage can at the end of in the maintenance room there. Is that?
I'm not questioning the replacement rate.
I think it's half in the garbage can now.
Yeah.
I know when Kyle talked about it, he said there were major problems with 2 of the systems this year, so he's only replacing 1, so I would rather save the reserve for if that second one does kick the bucket as well.
So, you know, my comeback to that is, we had reserve funds in the past. I know we used it once, didn't have to. I know that also.
Well, how large is the reserve fund?
Fund?
How large is the? reserve?
50,000. We just restocked it.
So if you take the 30 now, you have 20 for the next time, you just buy 10 somewhere else. It seems doable.
I'd like to propose that we hold off on any motions for 738 until we have a
Yeah,
greater picture of all lines.
Again, I
Hopefully
want to
early
make a motion,
January.
you know, just, because I think it's these guys where they want to use, it's their take on whether they want to use reserve fund or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say they don't want them, then that's,
It's a point well taken, and look, we're still faced with a $2 million approximate increase, right? This is a significant number.
yeah.
Any further comments on page 5? Page 6? Page 7?
Back to page 6, just questions on line 734. And Mr. Peoples, I'll look for your guidance here. Does switches for networking require replacement?
Annually?
No, but they've been adding to capacity, so for every connection that they make inside the school, that's a connection. If it's a hardwired connection, that's a port on a switch. It's one port. Depending on the switch, goes from, 4-port that you use at home to 48-port, a little higher capacity.
So that seems reasonable.
Yeah, it doesn't vary.
Thanks.
Page 7. Page, that's it. All right. Next is building and grounds. Page 1.
What are we doing with overtime? Is this another one where we're looking globally, or are we doing it line by line? What was,
I think we're starting it line by line, and then when we get to the end, we'll take a look globally and see if there's any additional tweaking.
all right. I haven't done any analysis on overtime. I'd like to take that offline and come back to the committee.
I do have a motion.
Okay, please.
I'll make a motion to reduce 130 overtime by $1,000, leaving a new line total of $2,000.
I'm sorry, which 130?
On page 1, GMS.
Two,
Oh, I'm
GMS.
sorry, GMS.
Okay.
No, I take that back, as I look at my notes. It was, you're right, it's LMS.
Yeah.
It's not GMS, it's LMS, because GMS does spend about that.
I'll second that.
It's been made and seconded. Again, I just looked at history.
Yeah, what I would tell you, they've already spent $900 this year.
900.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
And that will set it to 2. right?
That'll
Motion
set
was
it
for
to the
1,000.
line to $2,000, yep.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye for making line 130 overtime, reducing it by 1,000, leaving a new line total of 2,000. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 810 passes. Anything else on page 1?
And just for clarification, we discussed 580s and 272s tonight. You've already circulated the agenda for Thursday.
Mhm.
Will we add voting on 580s and 272
Um,
Thursday?
I was not gonna make a specific, agenda item for that, only because when we vote in January, we will be voting on those lines.
Okay,
So I
so
think if
save-
you're gonna make a global change, that would be the night to do it.
Perfect.
If you have something in the budget tonight, as we go through building and grounds, because I know I do have one that falls in that category, I'll be making that motion tonight.
Okay.
So if something jumps out,
Okay.
We'll have to find out where the 580 line shows up in the MS 27.
Yeah.
There'll be a little bit of work to be done there.
all right, page 2.
Excuse me, line 430 in the CHS custodial supplies. Make the motion to reduce that line by $900, specifically the replace 312-volt deep cycle batteries and high-speed buffer. The $1,800 line, reduce that one to $900.
All right,
Second for discussion.
there's a motion to reduce line 430 repairs and maintenance by $900, leaving a new line total of $2,100. Is there a second?
I seconded for discussion.
Okay,
Yep.
it's been seconded. Go ahead. What is that again?
That was, it says replace 3 12-volt deep cycle batteries and high-speed buffer. And I did not bring this up last time, I had missed it, the specific numbers there, and I did some research, because I do buy a lot of these batteries also, and then I checked with a battery supplier. 12-volt deep cycle batteries, even on the highest cost ones, are about $250 each. So I guess in hindsight, I should have asked specifically, but I am familiar with these high-speed buffers, and I use them myself, and I know I've never really spent more than $250, typically about $200 a battery. $600 for one 12-volt deep cycle battery is, I've never heard of that.
I think that's what he's saying, $600 for each machine.
No, and what Mr. Pascucci is
Yeah.
saying is 200 for each machine.
What are you saying per battery?
He's saying per battery, and I'm reading the notes here.
And if that's the
And I'm
case, that's-
thinking that's $600 for each machine.
Well-
Is there more than one of them down there?
Yeah, there's, I mean, each school, I mean, should have, well, or
Yeah.
at least the high school with all the large, should have one high-speed machine, because they are very expensive, very large, pretty massive machines. So I read that as replace 3 batteries that are 12 volts each battery
At
on
$600.
a high-speed buffer, and it's a $600 each battery is the way I'm reading it, and if it's something different.
And that's what the total lines out to.
Yeah, so I see that as one machine that has 3 batteries, which is common. Machines have 2, 3, or 4 batteries, depending upon what they are. This specific one has 3.
Going to get an answer.
That's the way I read it, too.
He's going to get an answer.
And I thought they had more than one. That's,
More than one machine, not at the
Yeah.
high school, because this is just at the high school,
Yeah.
and I doubt, I know, I
Right,
would
I'm just looking at the
swear
size
that
of the
there's
building
no
and go,
more
they
than
probably
one here.
have more than
Only
All right.
one guy, right?
yeah, you're
Yeah.
right, that's too much.
So, any further discussion?
If I could find a nice supervisor, I could ask them if we're talking about 3 buffers or 1.
I'm pretty sure there's only one at the high school. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing line 430, repairs and maintenance, by $900 for a new line total of $2,100, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstain? So that is 720, passes. Anything else on page 2? Page 3.
And we're going to talk about 580, we've agreed at another point. That's,
I have a specific reduction tonight. If you have a specific reduction, I would make it tonight, and then we'll look at it globally in January.
And I'm prepared for a global discussion tonight. It depends what the committee wants to do. It's completely up to you if you want to wait
Thought that's what we had already discussed, that we were going to do it.
in January.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, in this case here, I looked up where these conferences were, and so I have some, just a reduction based on where the conferences were.
I'll take that into factors.
That's why we can go globally, but in this case, I'm looking at something specific. So I'll make a motion to reduce 580 travel
I'm sorry, which page?
on page 3
Okay.
by $1,500, leaving a, line, the line at $3,000.
Second.
So where is it located?
Myrtle Beach. Actually, I was $4,500 on that line, but, because we never went to that, we never went to their school dude university before. Like,
I bet you they will this year.
So you reduce $3,000,
I'm reducing it to $3,000, so I'm reducing $1,500.
and rationale is,
And I don't have it up in front of me, but I have where it was located. And I don't have the specific location. I know up above, it's the one I did note was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
not for school dude. School dude
No.
university is in.
No, and
Myrtle Beach.
I didn't make my notes on that one, but, so that's why.
And that's why my question before about what are we getting out of it, you know, versus the amount of money we spent on it for all this time. We're sending somebody to training.
Okay, so that is why. The conference is in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and the fee is correct. The cost, see, now it's coming back to me. There's no way we should need $4,500 when the conference is in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
And that's
School
a
do
school
local conference and training.
Local conference and
And
training, then we have school dude
And
again.
then NNEFC is for 2 attendees. So that's why I'm making a reduction, leaving some there for travel, but the other 2 were local. South Carolina and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So that's where the $1,500 came from, sorry. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of reducing 580 travel by $1,500, leaving a new line total of $3,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstain? 720, the motion passes. Anything else on page 3? Page 4. I want to make a motion, 430, repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $11,660. And I did not do my math so that I know what's being left. That is, that leaves a new line total of 91,942. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. I think that we are behind on some of the things we need to do at all of our buildings. But when I took a look, the guidance room, secondary egress for $11,660, that room has been used that way for like 20 years. I understand why it's here. But with the reduction of the population in the school over time, it seems as though we ought to be, if it's really a safety consideration, we ought to be able to find another place in the building to, hold the guidance things that go on in there. So I just figured, I just looked and I said, you know what, if I had to pick the one thing that could wait another year, that's the thing that I would wait on.
Can I ask, what is exactly wrong with the door?
There are
see it.
two small, basically what it used to be is you had a small sort of work area with an office next door. Over time, they began to use both of those rooms as separate little guidance areas. And there's no secondary egress to what used to be the little office area. So they're proposing to put a door out into the hallway, so that there's an egress into both rooms from the hallway.
I got you.
It's been like that, like I said, the 20 years that I've lived here, and it's been used that way. If this is the year to, I'm not sure this is the year to change it, because we've had many, many, many more students in that building, and I think as our population declines, it seems reasonable that we ought to be able to find another small, little tiny area that we can, whatever purposes go on in there now, that we can do in another area.
There's some big-ticket items now that have failed, like the asbestos, the tiles, things that won't be there next year, and maybe that could be addressed then.
Yeah, and I just think, yeah,
Windows.
I think it's really important we keep up with the repairs in our buildings, and so I'd rather do some of those other things first, and if this really needs to be done because we can't find more space somewhere else, then next year would be better.
I could agree with what you said, Cindy. When I first saw that guidance room secondary door, I thought it was a door like some of the other ones that was malfunctioning or was an opening and closing. I didn't know it was a new door, but
It's a new door, yeah.
that would make sense, in my opinion.
Any further discussion?
Is there a fire concern with or without this door?
Is there a
Well, it's
window?
been, I
Oh, there's
don't see
windows.
that.
Is there a window in that room?
No.
There's no windows in any of that
Could you not
core area.
Turn it into like a storage closet and take a storage closet and turn that into?
It would probably be better off as a storage closet. I mean, it's tiny. It's
And that's
teeny,
probably
teeny,
what it
tiny.
was originally, right? Was it meant to be a
It's-
storage?
It was.
But they're gonna end up with classroom space here eventually that they could
Right.
put 2 cubes in if they wanted,
Right.
to a classroom area. There's other options, and
Like you said, if you have to pick between books and a door, I'm going with books.
Or asbestos in a door.
Yeah, I mean, the floor in the cafeteria is starting to peel. I mean, it's due.
It's about.
Yeah, I'll defer to those who did the walkthrough.
My take on this is that I would have handled it on an overall account basis as opposed to trying to decide whether
Piece by piece.
that's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. The guys that we had in here are the ones that really dug into it and looked at it. And if you look at what the total account is, for 30, it's almost $494,000, significantly higher than what we got budgeted this year and what we spent in the other years. The 3 schools, just these items, at Griffin, LMS, and Campbell, adds up to $292,000, significantly more than we spent there in years past. I mean, really significantly more. My approach would have been, say, what do we think is a decent bottom line number for 430, and then let them decide where to make those cuts. That
And
would
we
be
can-
my take.
They still can.
We can still do that. I know that
I know
when,
we can.
when we did the walkthrough of, especially GMS and LMS, there have been a lot of repair,
There's a lot has to be done
maintenance
there.
that's fallen by the wayside. So I'm very happy to, with the reduction of the Campbell bond, I'd be happy to use all of that money towards repairing the two older buildings that we have.
And I mentioned it to Dr. Cochran even earlier, why they didn't roll up all there's 3 or 4 different big issues in here that are scattered around. Student information system is one, technology is another, repairs and maintenance is another item, that they could have rolled all this stuff up and said, listen, for energy purposes, we're going to replace all the windows in GMS, we're going to put these doors in, and they could have rolled it into a smaller bond, put it on a warrant, and, move that separately, that item, and distribute that cost out over a few years, and took the individual budget year impact out, kind of flattened it, leveled it.
The recommendation coming from the Building and Planning Committee really is looking at taking GMS and breaking it into 4 or 5 compartments, which will essentially do a block at a time that would seal it and work on air quality and HVAC. So rather than doing all of the outside and the other, so that was the approach that we've been discussing. We're not really ready to come forward and didn't have costs at this point in time, but that's pretty much where the committee is. What is our long-term strategy with GMS and how do we go about it? And that was essentially the recommendation, that it made sense to compartmentalize the building rather than, because what you're looking at, there's no sense working on HVAC until you've got a section of the building sealed, and there are such discrete pieces in the building that it just made sense to do that, so.
In my mind, they go hand in hand. If you need to do the 2 things at the same time, your HVAC and because you're gonna significantly change air infiltration in that building by replacing windows and doors, so you wanna compensate for all those things at the same time.
But the
I'm
problem
not
is.
sure where one gets you anything, those big hallways connect everything.
Get an
so-
airtight building and no air circulation.
Right, that's what I'm saying, they go hand in hand.
So, my expectation is that we would come back with a year 1 proposal, a year from now.
So we're just not there yet. And I think you're right that doing a warrant article long-term, since the discussions were held long before I moved to town about what to do with those buildings, I think people would be willing to say, hey, if we didn't replace the buildings, there are investments that are needed, and this is what's going to cost, as a separate warrant article, absolutely. And once we get there.
And that's a shame, because, some of the stuff is kind of critical need, and it would save us some money overall, even in the short haul.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken. It's one that the committee has actually discussed, that if we had some money to throw at it, it would be to accelerate that window replacement process. So, I mean, the group agrees with you very much.
Well, when you put something in a bond, though, you're also paying interest, so if you can do it a little bit each year, and you have a target, I'd rather fund it in the budget.
The problem is, to fix that right, is gonna be more than what you can fix it in 1 year, and piecemealing over 5 years or 6 years or whatever, it's not gonna ever get the job done.
And if you do it a strategy of every year you do a warrant article, you run the risk of being turned down.
Right.
Whereas if you have a long-term vision as to how you're
Look,
going to do it
I think if you
locally-
were to sell it,
Oh, I agree. That's why I think
Yeah.
if you have a 5-year plan.
The other piece is, every corner of that building is used, so you have to limit the work that you can do in a given year to about a 5 to 6 week period.
Summer.
Last day of school, clean up, move everything, get the people in, do the work, then get it cleaned up and out. And that's the other limiting factor why we thought the 4 or 5 pieces made more sense.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $11,660 for a new line total, $91,942, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 810, motion passes. Anything else on page 4? Page 5?
Yeah, I got a slight change on one of these. Line 624, fuel oil. Using the cost per gallon that Frank provided, $2.93 per gallon, I would come up with a number for GMS of $64,460. So I'd move from $69,078 to $64,460.
I'll second that.
Sorry, Mr. Spencer, the reduction was?
So
Whatever
that's,
works out to.
that's a reduction of
5,000.
The one night I didn't bring my
4,600
calculator.
4,006.
Did I?
I got it.
It's 4,000.
All right, so that is a new line of 64,460, which is a reduction of $4,618. Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
Seconded, okay, further discussion?
Yeah, again, just trying to reflect what the government projections are for heating oil that particular year. And since we couldn't get anything from their consultant, I'll use Frank's numbers.
Any further discussion?
I suspect that's high, but,
I'm sorry?
I suspect that's still high,
I
but
think so too.
we don't have a better number to go off of.
All right. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of line 624 fuel oil, a reduction of $4,618 for a new line total of $64,460, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 810, motion passes. Anything else on 5?
I have a question, just so I can understand it fully. The portable classroom decks, ramps, and stairs replacement. Those are the ramps that are going in between the portables outside LMS, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doubting that they're, they're splintering and weathering, and my question is, how much longer do we anticipate having those for, those portables? I know at some point we'll be able to bring the classes in, but is that anytime soon, do you think? Or no?
Look at the enrollment numbers.
Well, that's why I got asked the question. I mean, I know the Roman numbers are going down, and I'm not, I'm not doing the math. The last I really paid attention to was a few years ago when I was really on the building committee, but I've lost kind of track of the numbers now.
Yeah, you can look at the enrollment numbers, but you're only losing a class at a time. There's 4 classes out there. So the answer to your question, it's gonna be a while.
So there were 5 out there at one point, was it?
There's 4 out there.
No, was there 5 at any time? No?
No.
Okay, so
One grade 5 class is in the building.
Unless you reconfigure it again and when moving back to Crystal.
And that would still take a long
Not
time.
suggesting that, and then.
But that would still also take a long time.
I'm sorry?
That would also take a long time.
I don't think it's gonna be as long as you think it's gonna be.
Okay, so it's more than a few years. Okay, that's what I was trying to determine. Thank you.
We gotta buy them. Wish we had when we had the chance.
Yeah, kindergarten.
So, all right, I'm going to make a motion, the bottom of page 5, and actually, page 5 also runs into page 6, just so, the top of page 6, just so you know that the total we see is also some of the items on the next page. I'm going to make a motion to reduce it by 14, I'm going to do it in 2 different motions. So I'm going to make a motion to reduce it by $9,780.
Second.
It's been made and seconded, and I'll tell you what the new total is in a minute. So that leaves a new line total of 106,518. And again, I know that they did some extensive repairs on those this year, because they were in pretty poor shape. And I just said, again, if some repairs were made this year, what could we put off? So I just picked that. Because again, I know there's a lot, especially at LMS and GMS, that,
This could be a serious liability, though, for the town,
What's that?
right? Depending upon the state and condition of these ramps, which I don't know.
yeah,
Right.
I know they had, like, we were told they had to make extensive repairs this year. They re-screwed them down and,
We did some patching this year. It's been broken and uneven. There was a spot that came and so they did a patch this year. There also was a urinal that was broken and not replaced, and the steel structure frame was stuck into the room, creating a safety hazard. So we had to decide it was gonna be cheaper to replace the urinal. Or take it,
This is
or
the
do it.
decks to the portables.
But was there not talk about using like Trex decking or something?
Yeah.
Which I think probably won't need them long enough to need the Trex decking.
But I just want to understand what we're talking about. I mean, I
I
understand
thought
Cindy's motion
we
was
were
that.
talking about the floor replacement.
We're still on
No.
430.
I'm
No,
talking,
I'm sorry, she
Okay.
made the motion about the ramps,
The
yeah.
ramps to the
Okay, I thought we'd
portables,
moved
yeah.
on.
Yeah, ramps to the portables. And again, when we went on our tour, that was something they said, we had pictures, and I was just looking to see if I could find them, I can't. And they had to do some extensive repairs to them this year. So I thought, okay, and I granted it's a Band-Aid. And again, just trying to pick something,
This is pressure-treated wood, right? The ramps, last time I saw them was a few years ago. Pressure-treated wood going up, right?
yep.
And if, I'm guessing if it's just, is it wear and tear and cracks and splintering? Is that something that could be, with these new deck paints, painted over? That's what I'm guessing. If it's simply that, or is it structural? But I don't see anything saying structural. And if we did do extensive repairs this year, was that structural work to make them safe?
So, I don't think any of that's structural, to be honest with you.
Because
Yeah.
if it's not structural, then it could be cleaned up with
Yeah, it
deck
was,
paints and sealers and.
It's not, it wasn't painted or stained or anything like that. There was no preventative.
Right, it's bare pressure-treated
It
wood.
is. I do have a picture of it.
You do?
from that.
yeah,
well,
I thought we had got pictures of it.
Because I would be okay with that
Never seen
motion and of not replacing them this year and just cleaning up the cracks and painting them if it warrants it.
Pass it. I believe this is that one. That's that section right there. That's the condition of it. However, there are some doors that are questionable if they had to, make a choice. Repairing a deck or maybe living with a door in the condition that it is.
but if we cut if we reduce two positions, could we get rid of one portable and then use that money?
Yeah, I mean, it's assuming that we can't get rid of the portables now,
I mean,
we'll have to go on that.
And I didn't get to do, I was gonna go this weekend, I wanted to go around and look at all the exterior doors, I never got a chance.
There's a couple that, there's a metal that can be molded, and I've fixed many trucks, fuel tanks, just temporary fixes. They last 3 years or so. There's a couple spots on them doors that are questionable. Could be done with that. I know you guys are knowledgeable enough to maybe save one or two doors and then you can pick and choose which direction you would.
Well, as for the decks, I think we have the benefit of Mr. Bork, who's a contractor. And he knows pressure-treated wood very well. But what's your opinion? Could something?
I agree with you. I mean,
Something painted over that,
absolutely.
whether it even be the sand type
Deck over.
grip
Yeah.
paint or just the deck over?
You could go out and replace that wood today, and a year and a half, 2 years from now, it's gonna look the same thing. That's just what pressure treated does, especially if it's not taken care of.
And then painting could extend the life a little bit at least, and it will seal up the splinters.
Yeah.
Because that stuff goes on thick, that's high solids, that stuff.
Yeah,
It goes
yeah.
on thick and it pretty much seals everything up, right?
Yep.
That's my take on it also.
Deck over.
There's many different brands out on the market, and there's even the stuff with the sand grit in it too, to make it skid resistant, and that stuff's even thicker.
But I have to agree with Bill. This is the kind of item that where we should be at the bottom line.
Right.
Take the bottom line cut, because the reality is there's $10,000 in there for the Victaulic seal replacement, which is, I think, excessive. So, I mean, we shouldn't be choosing their priorities. We should do what we feel is, what we think the town's gonna be comfortable with.
And I guess the bottom line is, I mean, to steal that phrase, is we're not choosing their priorities, because obviously anything could be switched around after our motions. I guess we're just giving some direction and suggestions based upon a budget number that they could choose to ignore, or,
Well, it also just ties the cut to a specific number, it's just not some random.
and we're still not doing it in lieu of a bottom line cut, so we're doing this, and then we could still go over it again.
I mean, I guess I look at what can we afford, and if there's something we can put off, and that's the only reason why I picked something specific, then if we can afford it, if we can put it off to another year, that's why I looked at what, the information that was presented to us. And if they want to choose, if they discover that one of the doors doesn't need to be replaced, and they then can choose to do that, I'm not tying anybody's hand, I'm just making a value judgment on the information we've been presented.
And I agree, and the other side of that whole conversation is that we look at items like this that come into the budget, we talk about them, they don't happen this year, they come into next year's budget, we talk about them again, they don't happen. This is a repeating cycle. And it would be nice to somehow, that's why I like the warrant, because they have a plan, here's the plan, execute that plan, and there's no, because, there's no, we didn't do that because we didn't have the money in. The teacher salary on that line, I'm right over, so we stole that money. And so, both sides of the argument play very well. I want to move forward, getting the buildings taken care of. I'm with Chris on maintenance and with everybody on education. We need to do that, but how the hell do you get through this and still afford it?
Let me say, I can support your proposal, because I think you're gradually getting down a number I think is reasonable for a bottom line number.
I have another one, too, that I haven't made.
Yeah, and we're not at my number yet, Cindy, so. I really think it's up to the guys, the people that are running the show in the schools to decide how to spend the money.
I'm not gonna be supportive of this motion, mainly because I don't want to tick and tie to this level. And plus I think that, this could present liability to the district, by specifically choosing this. I'd rather look at it globally.
Well, it doesn't tie the district to go by our.
Right, they can still do whatever,
Yeah.
but they can
So if
also.
So if it's a liability, then it would be up to them to fix it regardless. Just as if something happened, a step broke mid-year, and it wasn't a budgeted item.
And I guess to be really technical, if they didn't do it based upon our suggestion, and then it was a liability issue, they can't say it's the budget committee's fault.
Yeah.
You could have taken $9,000 off general repairs and
It's
still
not a legal
end
argument,
up the
but
same place.
Yeah, and
It's not a legal argument, but I mean, it's the position you're taking, saying, don't replace the stairs.
well,
Then if it does become a hazard, hey,
It's a good thing you have
Yeah,
a lawyer.
and I almost took a global cut, but I decided to do it giving the rationale for why I was picking the numbers that I was.
So just do a
So-
full cut then of the total.
Well, I need some advice on the rest of it. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $9,780 for a new line total of $106,518, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstain? So that was 7-0.
I missed the joke.
The motion passes. Who said?
Just two.
Oh, I thought Ray
I
said,
did.
okay, so
Oh, you
it's
did say
three,
no.
so it's 6-3-2, excuse
I
me.
agree with you.
So the rest of this line is on the next page. And I listened to the discussion last week about the heating pipes, and that $10,000 was the wrong number, but nobody seemed to have an idea of what the right number was, so I was just gonna pick a reduction of $5,000. So if somebody has a better number,
Is that a motion?
I will start out by making a motion to reduce an additional $5,000 from 430 repairs and maintenance, and
106,518.
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay.
And the reason is, this is a swag number. He sat right here, loved Dave to death, didn't have a clue what this is gonna cost. And as we go further, we're gonna see there's another line item that's like this. I think this is, I don't know what to think on that. All I'm telling you is, I think that's a high number, and
like I
I
said,
support the reduction, but
my reduction was in the ballpark of $15,000, and those were the two areas. I listened to the discussion. I don't know if reducing 5,000 is the right number or not.
Either.
But everybody said, oh, that's way too high, and as you said, Dave said that that was his best estimate, but he knew it was high as well.
Now, when we toured this, this was the area inside the boiler, specifically inside the boiler rooms. It had nothing to do with any pipes and going over any of the ceilings.
No, he said this was the
Boiler room
ceilings.
area.
Yeah, these were the,
Pipes in the ceiling.
these were the
Yeah.
pipes in the ceilings, and the discussion last week was there were these joints that you have to take apart and put the new joints in,
Victolic couplings every 20 feet.
so I
Okay,
really
there were
was,
what, 3 or 4 rooms that had some kind of funnel system in there? That-
yeah.
I think that was for roof leaks.
Yeah, well, yep.
But this is for the heating lines, the runs in the heating system. So every 20 feet, there's a joint. And the seals in those Victolic couplings go bad. Actually, they not necessarily go bad as they start to leak because you take the pressure off the system.
My opinion's the exact same as the ramps.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be supportive of that one.
And like I said, there were numbers thrown around last week, I don't know what the right number is, I just halved it.
I mean, haven't we already battled the mold issue up in there and in that building?
I agree, but Dave said that was a high number. Ray had some specific costs for what those joints would cost and said it was a high number. I just picked a number, so that's what it is.
10-4.
Sounds good.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $5,000 for a new line total of $101,518, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So we've got, I think it failed, so we have, how many, no? We got
No.
four no's? Okay, so
And how many ayes?
actually, that's
So it failed.
5-4.
5-4.
Okay, so it does pass then.
And sorry, what was the last, what was the number again?
The new line total is $101,518.
18.
Yep. Anything else on page 6?
Can I just go back to page 5?
Yep.
On item 411, utilities and water. Why is the water usage so high at Litchfield as opposed to Griffin and Campbell? Any particular reason? I mean, it's as high as the other 2 schools almost. Item 411?
Projected water usage?
Yes. Is there a reason, something to do with boilers or how that place is?
Should be just about equal across all, well, actually,
Oh, you got the gym and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
But then you think the high
They
school
don't have
would be,
a
because
gym.
they're showering after meets and whatnot.
High school's on a well.
It's 8,200 in
Well, that would be different.
Griffin, 16,800 at Litchfield, and 11,800 at Campbell.
Campbell's on a well.
Campbell's on a well.
We think.
No, Campbell's on a well.
Yeah,
You know?
I look at their benefits.
Yeah, Campbell's on a well,
So why is it 11,800?
because,
But water
That's a
is
good
close to-
Fire protection? Is that on the well, or is
That well
that,
would have to run dry with the
wait a
usage.
minute.
Well, fire
there,
protection, no, there's no sprinklers.
Yes,
There are sprinklers.
Yeah,
the sprinklers are on a well.
There must be a pump somewhere. so it
The
should be on.
sprinklers are on a
that's gotta
well.
be hydrant.
The sprinklers are on the
They gotta
well,
be.
that's what it is.
It's on a well.
Yeah, because when Pennachuck
Yeah, we
flushes,
have hydrants right out here in the park.
restrooms get,
Yeah.
brown, so.
That's
So-
not well then. That's
Oh,
no,
the field.
irrigation is on a well.
The
The
field
field, right?
irrigation's on a
Yeah.
well, the building itself is not,
Okay.
which is, I'm
That
trying to
makes
remember now. Do we
Yeah,
have
sprinklers.
sprinklers at LMS outdoors? I think recently some were added to the landscaping?
That wouldn't account for that kind of water usage.
No, it shouldn't, I would think. I don't know.
But saying the actuals,
That supports it, pretty much.
Yeah.
We're close,
It's a good question, but, yeah, looking at the actuals, they spend it.
yeah. Is there a motion then for anything on page 5?
I will make them, it was mostly a question. and
Yeah,
Trying
it's a
to
good
kind of
question.
justify it, yeah.
Page 6,
Yeah. Page 6, count 624 fuel oil. I've moved from 54,791 to 51,128.
Second.
okay, the motion is to make that new line total 51,128, which is a reduction of 3663, yep.
Is that setting it at the new rate of 293?
293.
3663. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 624 fuel oil, a reduction of $3,663, which leaves a new line total of $51,128, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That's 810. Anything else on page 6? Page 7? Which also runs over to page 8.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line 434, air duct cleaning, 67,200.
A motion to reduce 434 air quality by $67,200.
Second, for discussion.
It's been made and seconded for a new line total of 30, looks like $3,200. But I haven't, yeah. Further discussion?
We spoke about this briefly last week. I don't know if anybody did any research on the subject of air duct cleaning in general. I just simply don't believe it's needed here.
Chris, can I just ask, you said you've done this before in the past. So air ducts after 14 years, they don't get dirty?
I'm not
They need to be
saying
cleaned?
there's
No, I'm just asking, I mean, generally after 14 years, do air ducts need to be cleaned?
No, not in a newer system such as this with the good air handlers, with the proper.
So when do they need to be cleaned?
Really, never,
Never. All right.
yeah.
Actually, the piece that I sent Cindy was there is no national recommendations.
No, I
The
didn't ask for national- I
recommendation,
didn't ask for national recommendation, I'm just asking, do they ever get cleaned?
I was gonna finish that, and if you read that document, the rest of all the outlining, when they should be cleaned was in there. And after inspection, if there's significant mold, or if there's algae, if there's accumulation of dirt, like, sometimes you will open ducts and they'll have inches of dirt because they never had
So
filters in
there are,
them.
there are times they need to get cleaned then?
Yes,
Okay,
but they're in and if you read that, it would tell you that were very old buildings with older heating systems and non-filtered systems. And we talked about cutting a hole in a duct to inspect them.
Yep.
And we asked that question, and it wasn't done. So,
No, I'm
this
just
is,
asking for clarification as to whether or not they ever need to be cleaned. Chris says no, and there are times.
no,
they
I'm
have to be
saying,
cleaned.
yeah, I'm saying there was 5
saying-
items that specifically said they need to be clean if this condition exists.
Ultimately, with an item this
Understood.
large, I think it would be incumbent to demonstrate that it's needed,
And-
and that has not been done.
Yeah, I mean, of course, special
Inspect.
circumstance, like I said, mold, or if there's an issue, if there was a water damage or a specific situation. But under normal running situations with high air ducts, as opposed to the older buildings where the air ducts were low on the
the
ground,
floor.
where they
And we
used to
have
pull in more
filters, right?
dirt and dust, and correct. So when I say newer systems, 20, 30 years, the way they're built, where they place the ducts, how they do it, they have the flexible ductwork going to a
Right.
main run. So basically, that's my first premise, that we don't need it deducted. And then, of course, if it ever determined that it was needed, then I could now discuss the price, because that's excessive, because there's really not many runs in there. Most of it is the flexible ductwork. So, right, you can't clean. So what you do clean, when you clean ductworks, are main trunk lines, which are the large, 24-inch by 12-inch main runs, the ductwork, so.
But realistically, it's a closed envelope, so if you have, for the most part.
Right, not necessarily.
So if the dirt that's gonna get introduced into the ducts is gonna come from the outside, and you would see it in the filters when we change them.
Correct, the dirt that's going in is in the
So how are filters
returns.
when we empty them?
This would really be a non-issue if somebody did an inspection. I'm looking right here and I see shiny silver ductwork right there.
Yeah, here
And
too,
there's no
that was where I
dust.
looked.
Yeah.
I mean, I would support clean air,
That's the return
absolutely,
over
but I
there.
would for $70,000, somebody should have poked around a little bit, done a couple.
And I think there's been some changes in personnel at the high school, so I think certainly when we received the report last week, the person who currently sits in that position is not opposed to actually doing a little bit of research to find out.
I am, yeah. I mean, something like that, I would like to have a little inspection.
Just,
Justify it, and if it was dirty, there was dust in there, or any debris, any moss being
But
blown out of the
To
vents.
be clear, nobody is opposed to clean air.
No, everybody
I just
wants
think
clean
that when
air.
we see a number this big, it's reasonable to request
And-
some sort of
We didn't ask for a lot.
reason as to why that large of a number should be.
Actually, we did ask that of the business
And it's
agent.
not an unreasonable request when you see
And it was like,
$70,000.
it just needs to be done, and that's the bottom line to it, and sometimes that isn't the right answer.
Yeah, so to the
Every
viewers,
3
we
years,
asked.
Greg. Every 3 years.
20 grand.
The maintenance staff is doing a good job cleaning the filters. There's always enough money in the budget for the filters. Just so people know, the supply ones right here, what's coming out of there is already going through the system, through the filtration, and it's fresh air blowing outward. So the dirt doesn't make it through the main heating system. Where the dirt accumulates in ductworks are those, which are the returns. And obviously, most of the dirt accumulates on the outside, which I know they vacuum off occasionally. And whatever makes it through there, for the most part, makes it all the way to the filter. And then when they pull the filter out, all the dirt's on there. It doesn't accumulate in there. Now, if there's a huge mold issue, anything, that gets sucked in, or if there's water or flood up there, and water, that's where the issue where you might have to clean it. Other than that, you really don't.
Kevin?
I agree. I do. I agree with you, Chris, truly. Most of the time, where you find the dirt, like you said, is when you pull that filter out of the system, that's where you're cleaning, most of the time, so.
Like this guy, get him on the committee.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of 434 air quality, a reduction of $67,200 for a new line total of $3,200, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So 810, motion passes.
A point of discussion on 434 still with the filters.
Mhm.
Surely we've had filters for our air systems in the past, but I don't see any line items for it.
No, it's filters for air and there's common filters for me.
Okay, but again, no, is
It's
this,
not broken out.
It's a new
is
line.
this dependent upon the air duct cleaning being done?
No.
No.
What was
Separate.
guidance did last year?
Filters
I
happen
don't know, it's
all
not
the
here.
time.
Zero.
610 supplies.
That's my question.
It's generally been under 610 supplies.
Yeah, I'm sure they've been buying them.
Yeah,
I'm sure they have two, just a question regarding whether
What
it's
the history.
contingent upon this cleaning happening.
And depending on which system it is in the building, it could take roll filters where the filter is changed, the filter is changed as the system runs, or they could be just standard filters where they have to stack.
yeah, because when you look under, it looks like LMS, under their 610 supplies, it's filters, HEPA for air handlers. So I believe that's something that's traditionally been.
And what's that amount?
On LMS, it's $1,000.
Is LMS all air conditioned?
No.
Well, they have a bunch of.
That's probably why.
Because you don't have you have small air filters in the unit heaters, unit ventilators in the classrooms. That'll bring fresh air in. That goes through a filter before it goes through the heating coil.
Anything else on page 8?
I had asked for a quantity on item, it's 430, repairs,
What's that?
all the way to the bottom, well, for page 8, towards the middle, for 10,800.
Yep,
I had asked for,
square foot.
yeah, and I haven't received anything.
Is that for the concrete replacement?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was high too.
Matt did indicate that there was a quote, and the square footage is stipulated in the quote, but I don't believe he's.
He didn't have it on him.
So that's to remove and replace the whole staircase?
Yep, the loading dock.
Contractor look at other alternatives for addressing the issue?
I'm not gonna make a motion, but we still have time
Well,
to
it
make this
comes
adjustment
bottom
once we
line.
get a square footage, but
I just.
I would really like to have it.
I question whether the contractor provided other alternatives, because removing and replacing would not be the only solution.
Right. You
Most
extend the
likely, budget
staircase out.
numbers, they go in with a complete reconstruction and
Well, I mean,
then.
if that's what they're told to do, that's
See what
one
they
thing,
have,
but
right.
if you say, hey, buddy,
Right.
I do
No,
this.
it could be legitimate. I mean, I didn't see it.
Forward. Leave the existing staircase there, because the only thing that's coming off is spalling the surface. So if you added 8 inches of concrete to it and poured it off, just move the whole staircase forward. I can't imagine that costing $10,800, but
Yeah, you can't really do
I thought this is
that.
where it was deteriorating to the point they tried to do repairs to it and.
Yeah.
it wasn't
they tried to
working.
resurface it by the sounds of it.
I just wanted to know the square footage.
All right, well, put a little, either make a motion or put a sticky there, and
I got a
if we,
sticky circle.
if we don't get an answer, then that's your homework.
Got it.
That's what mine, this says too
Or,
much.
okay, you can all have homework. Anything else on page 8? Page 9?
I just have a question on electricity, real quick. I know it's part of the Smart Start program. Does that insulate us from rate increases in any way, shape, or form?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so.
Because PSNH substantially raised their rate today.
I think Smart Start
Another couple of cents.
is a usage
Pardon?
piece, not a rate piece.
Can we switch?
Yeah, well, the smart, we're paying off a loan basically, they gave us.
Right.
But the other piece of it is the usage piece,
No, you
and I
can-
don't,
I don't have
I
PSNH
don't think
supplier.
that's.
Doesn't insulate, it doesn't insulate us from a rate increase.
Generator.
All right, we gotta have one conversation going on at a time.
Sorry.
Um,
I got my answer.
So my
Okay.
question is, are we required to, do we have the option of switching to generator? Like, I know personally, I switched from PSNH as my electricity generator or provider. Does the school have that option?
I don't know what the contract calls for. The only thing that we're obligated under a Smart Start is to pay off
Right.
the loan. I don't know what they do as far.
I'm not even sure we're buying from PSNH.
I don't think we are
It was
either.
more in the back of my brain.
I think that's part of that consortium, we're part of where we get the fuel, the, this, that, and the other thing all bargained.
But is-
That we can't get the price on, because it's confidential.
I just-
But what I can tell you is the Smart Start numbers are correct.
Yeah.
And we'll be paying those off for another couple of years.
I have a motion, 430 repairs and maintenance, reduction of $1,100, level funding it
Second for discussion.
to 7,100.
Where are you, Cindy? I'm sorry.
Bottom of page 9, repairs and maintenance.
Okay, and you're
It's
moving
not
on?
tied to anything specific, it's just looking at history, and we spent of almost 5,000 2013, we spent 1,000 in 2014. I don't know why it's up, it seems to make sense what they're asking for, so I just level funded it.
Yeah, what number?
7,100, which is a reduction of 1,100.
430 repairs and maintenance.
Yeah, it's not tied to anything in their line, it's just history. And
When you say level funded, I'm not
Yeah,
sure I'm
it's-
following when you say
Yeah,
level
it's not
funded.
level funded.
they have, I just looked at the, oh, you know what? I looked at it wrong, I'm sorry. I looked at his 1,100 reduction.
You can add 1,100 if you'd like.
No, I was looking.
That would level fund it.
And the reason I thought that was an increase is because I looked at the history and said, oh, we don't even come close, assuming that was a reduction, doesn't even, still leaves a lot of room, and.
You're right, there's still room,
Yeah,
but it's not level funding.
so I just, 1,100 is what I proposed, for the wrong reason, but the motion still stands.
Just want a clarification, man.
Any further discussion?
I'll be looking for, again, a global.
Hearing none, all those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $1,100 for a new line total of 7,100, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So that is 720, it passes. 10.
think we should do something with 626 fuel. Who would like to make a motion?
Go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, what is, yeah,
This
I
is
can't
the
make a
fuel.
motion, 'cause I don't know how much fuel we're talking about.
Well,
Well,
just-
this is the fuel that they get to take care of the lawnmowers, the truck, they get from the town. In the town budget, they have allocated a certain amount of money
Mhm.
that they'll get revenue from the school for. If you look at what they spent the last couple of years,
Mhm.
1,700, 2,300, and look for 3,500 in the face of the cost of fuel, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm happy to let you make a motion. if you'd like.
Oh, thanks.
I'll make a
I'd like
motion to
see you make
reduce.
one.
I've been, I got shot down one.
I want some of your past.
In the interest of time, I'll make a motion to reduce 626 by $1,500 to $2,000.
It's
Second.
been made and seconded, a reduction of $1,500, leaving $2,000 in the line. Further discussion?
I believe, I don't recall exact, but I believe Matt had mentioned there's additional equipment he has now, and thus the additional gas used.
But what they spent has been at the, you know what the rate has been.
Weed
But
whackers
now
and
he- but now he
blowers,
has
and
more
they
equipment.
don't use a lot of fuel.
No.
Equipment doesn't take the gas as much as the trucks do. No.
Get on the roll on that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 626 fuel, a reduction of $1,500 for a new line total of $2,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So 810 passes. Anything else on page 10?
And do I,
Page 10,
using the same spreadsheet.
page 11.
Yeah, my original go-to position, ground services, power sweeping of parking area and driveways. I'd like to reduce that line by 700, so the total number, let me see here.
I know it's 11.
Page 11.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's 430,
Page 11, right here.
right, where does it start? It starts right above it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just at the very bottom of page 10, 430
Yep.
repairs and maintenance, it's 11.5, so a reduction of 700 would make that 10.8. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, and it's the same, we made it, this entire committee agreed to make that line $500 last year. Actually, of all three schools, each one we made 500, and it was accepted by this committee. I think the explanation we got, and based upon what I know about the industry, 500 is more than enough to get that parking area swept. I still think it's still too much, but I'd be happy with bringing it to where we were last year.
Any further discussion?
I agree. I think that once we cut the other two schools, you'll still be able to sweep those twice
Right.
a year. I drove all three schools tonight. I got additional cuts on catch basins. I did a count, but, yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. And you can still sweep the schools twice safely. Plenty of hours allotted for that. And we carried high hours. I mean, I carried 125 an hour.
Yeah.
And I know Fred Hale sweeps for the town at a better rate than that, so.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $700 for a new line total of $10,800, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? Passes 810.
I'd like to go down a little lower, 430 under LMS ground services, the same thing, power sweeping, 1,200, lower it to 700, please.
700?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were on 11, okay.
So, did you have a comment on the catch basins?
Right, yeah, if we're going to continue on Griffin, yes. On the catch basins in Griffin, I come up with, I found 6 structures. We have $1,100 allotted. I know the town pays $35 per structure to have cleaned, and there could be 8. I would like to cut it to $300.
So,
Those basins also, they need to be cleaned, every 2 to 3 years. So that allows enough money if something needs to be adjusted at a certain time or repaired, if there's a sinkhole. They do fail, that usually costs $300 to rebuild.
all right.
Your motion's
So-
for $800.
so the motion is
Right.
to you wanted to leave 300, right?
Correct,
So that's,
for Griffin, yes.
so that's a reduction of $700.
800.
For,
Catch basin cleanup?
oh, okay,
Correct.
1,100, I'm sorry, I need glasses. So it's a reduction of $800 for a new line total of $10,000. Is there a second?
I'll second for the discussion that's already started.
All right.
I
The town still, the schools, they use pretty much straight salt. It doesn't get a whole lot of debris into it. And they're at $35 a piece. You clean those about every 2 to 3 years. And I don't even know the last time it's been discussed. Nobody had record of it last year when we brought this up.
I think that they are clean. I'm just going back to, I think they are clean because it's part of this overall town stormwater management plan, and that's a federal mandate. But, I'm pretty sure they piggyback that on with the town.
If there's one of
When
the
Jack
three
cleans
schools
catch
I would
basin.
worry about GMS with the water situation is the one to make sure that the
You want to make sure we
catch
maintain the
basin cleanout
capacity.
is done.
Any further discussion?
Was there a second on that?
Yes.
Carrie?
It was,
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of 430, repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $800, leaving a new line total of $10,000 even, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So 720, it passes.
I don't know enough about it.
Anything else for the bottom of page 10 or the top of page 11?
You had the
We'll just-
other one.
Well, I was out of order. I mean,
So,
the order
let's-
we were going in.
Let's
so.
now move to page 11, the rest of page 11.
Yes. Okay, so now, motion, bottom of page 11, 430 under LMS, power sweeping, move that to remove that to, I'm sorry, 500, a reduction of 700 is my motion.
Okay, so there's a reduction of
Oh.
$700 for a new line total of
you're making it
4,900?
7.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm making the specific line power sweeping, yes. I'm removing $700 from power sweeping, which brings it, the line of 430 to 4,900.
Yep. Is there a
Okay.
second?
You need some sleep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that was painful. I'm sorry, everybody. That was painful.
We all knew what you meant too,
Yes,
Chris.
you all knew what I meant,
So it's been made and
I
seconded. Any
apologize.
further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $700 for a new line total of 4,900, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So 810, it
Sorry, who
passes.
seconded that?
Dan, yep.
Thank you.
And same thing with the catch basins, if we can continue.
Okay.
I counted 12 in Litchfield Middle School.
And your motion is to reduce by how much?
I'm gonna reduce it to $600,
To
So,
$600?
minus 7.
So minus 7.
I'll second that.
And that still, again, leaves them, that's more than enough to cover a cleaning every year.
12 at 35 is 420, so that's an extra 180.
I'm kinda carrying $50 apiece, you know.
Yeah,
If they do it every other year, they can, in case one fails, it's $300 to adjust a catch basin, so I'll leave them some money to do that.
All right, so there is a motion to reduce 430 repairs and maintenance by an additional $700, leaving a new line total of 4,200. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passes 720. Anything else on page 11?
Yeah, line 450, site development. I don't remember the conversation for this, clear all trees and stumps along the back of soccer field. We had nothing in there before, and it's $3,500 now.
It's actually 6,500.
6,500,
Is the line.
yeah.
It looks like they're building a new field, is that what they're doing?
Soccer field.
They're clearing stumps along the back for $3,500, and then they are clean up and develop for use by middle schools for another $3,000.
Beginning of the process to make a field down there, so we don't have to bus the kids to this school. Or even sometimes make them walk to the school for a sporting event, so they can have their own field at the middle school.
With all the new soccer fields that we just put in down
Still
on.
not enough.
Could we not use impact fees?
There's been talk for years about the need for a real soccer field at LMS. Is this a real soccer field? This just sounds like clearing
It's
trees.
the beginning of making a soccer field.
So what's the total cost of the soccer field?
Well, I mean, and that's it. I mean, you're clearing the trees, you're planting the seed, it's gonna become a soccer field.
How is it gonna be irrigated?
A lot more to that.
What about site development, flattening?
Again, this is the beginning.
Okay.
The guys were here on Tuesday, or last week, whatever.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't get brought up.
No?
It wasn't highlighted.
But
anything.
I agree with you, I mean, they talk about fertilizer and everything else, the plan is to get a field here.
Correct.
Should that not be a warrant article then? The new facility?
No, not
Well,
necessarily.
you're
Talking about
asking
clearing
for additional,
LMS.
That's the
the
space.
taxpayers to maintain additional space though. 'Cause now you have to cut it regularly, you have to do all this additional stuff.
You don't have to bust the kids.
Well,
That's the biggest thing. That's-
I'm going to make a motion to reduce this line item by $6,499.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded.
Dr. Kaufman, do you recall what's going on with this?
For a second of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not opposed, like I said, as long as I can remember, there's been talk about needing a field at LMS. I guess this slipped under the radar because I don't feel like it's a plan. Just clearing some trees and throwing some seed down does not make a field. A field is a lot more involved than that.
I agree with that. And again, in this tight year, if you have to ask me about a soccer game or a textbook, I'm going to err with the textbook. And I just think this is one of those places where if they really want to develop a field, they could use impact fees if they have some left.
Is there
And-
already an existing soccer field?
No.
So I would
The
think-
description is a little.
There's no field there at all? I don't even remember.
There's a cleared area.
There's a long back soccer field.
I would go
There's
Making
a
me think
roughly
there's-
rectangular.
Yeah, there is a soccer field
Space
down
with
on the-
grass on it. I think the plan is that if you're able to clear and expand and throw seed in, mow it regularly, give a little bit of treatment, then over time, most of the field will grow in, and then you'll be able to transition at a pretty low cost.
How long would that process take?
It's not a biggie.
Well, my take on it
Time, no, is
is,
it 5 years? 10
it's
years?
not irrigated in Litchfield, ain't growing.
Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm not against the field either, but this doesn't look
Kicking
like
grubs.
you're gonna get a field for $6,500 cutting trees. Obviously, I think it's taking the stumps out also, but you'd have to level it. And then just throwing seed down is not gonna grow grass. You have to get an irrigation system under there.
Seriously?
An
is that
existing
what
field,
they're
right?
doing?
The field's there now.
Yeah,
It's just not regulation.
you're just trying to.
So there is a field there.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a field at all.
Yeah.
There,
Well, it still needs to be
it's,
cleared.
That's where they teach you phys ed classes.
there's a grassy area over
Right.
the leach
It's not a
field.
field.
It's not a field.
That's why I said a rectangular grassy space.
But it seems more appropriate if we're trying to expand it because we have the facilities need based on, look at impact fees. If we're in a tight budget and if there's an alternative way of paying for something that we say we need, I say we explore those options.
I don't think you could use impact fees, but I do think this is something you need an actual plan. And you need to do it right.
Yeah, this is,
And I just want to be clear for the record, because I agree with exactly what Cindy said, you need to do it right if you're going to do it. Nobody here is against the field,
No,
correct? Okay.
I think
Not
it's,
against
I
it,
think it's
okay.
needed. I just don't see a plan that I
We'll
can
move it
support
this-
yet.
I just wanted that for the record, that nobody's against building a field. We're just, the discussion has nothing to do whether we think the field is important for
There's
this.
more popping the
Is
stump.
this leading up to a donation offer? Right?
Honestly,
You know what, I bet you can get help.
Too high, sorry.
A bunch of us guys did it at Darrah Pond. We went down and took down a bunch of trees, and I'd be willing to volunteer time. I know you would too. So, yeah, we cut down trees. I enjoyed knocking things down, so.
I know at one point when there was discussion about a school being built on the LMS property, that the soccer association donated, and I forget, $10,000, $15,000, forget what it was, towards fields in that area. I don't know that they would do that, but certainly there's been an interest in the community in making that into a field. I just think there needs to be a plan the community can support. Hearing no further discussion, 450 site development, a reduction of $6,499, leaving $1 in that line item, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So that was two, who's a no?
No.
3 noes.
No.
So there's, so that's 6-3-0. The motion
Say let 'em
passes.
play. No, let's do it right.
end up in
And moving on to page 12.
I have two motions, actually. 733 and 737. One is furniture additional, and there's 2 storage sheds in there for 4,000. 737 is furniture replacement, 1 storage shed that's rotting. So, am I to assume, and I just have to ask before I make the motion, that we are replacing 3 sheds on that site? So with 2 new ones and replacing 1.
Yeah, you're not replacing 3, you're replacing 1 that's rotting, and you're adding 2 additional.
I'd like to make a motion for line 733 to reduce that to 0.
So there is a motion to reduce 733 by $4,000, leaving 0. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion. Highway.
I just, when Matt was here and the rationale for the sheds is, I don't think it supports it. We're gonna take material that we're storing in schools, put it out in a little storage shed where it's prone to being broken into. They've had problems with the sheds getting broken into. That was one of the things he said. 2,000, if you look at the total sheds in here, I think there's 2 more coming up. It's an awful lot of expansion for 1 year.
Are there two ball fields there?
This is for both ball fields, right, the
all
ball
field
fields are
equipment.
at GMS, so this is for LMS. LMS now has to travel to GMS to play softball, baseball, practice every day, and what was said anyways at the meeting last week was they have no place to put the equipment down there at the
The
fields.
bases and what have you.
Yeah,
So this is really the whole, the sporting equipment.
sporting equipment for the ball fields.
So why 2 sheds?
2 8x8 sheds.
Where are
It's
the
2 fields.
It's not a big
8
shed.
by 4 is 32, that's 64 square feet at each shed.
So for
Tiny.
like 2 home bases, 3 bases, what else, 2 drag nets?
Yeah.
What else do you need to store?
64 square feet per shed.
Yeah, it's full. By the
That's
time you get
120
everything
square
in.
feet of storage.
All right,
Yeah.
so the motion is to reduce it to 0, and I apologize, I forgot, was there a second?
I'd second for
Okay,
discussion.
okay.
Wish you would've
That's right,
given
you
one.
did, you did.
I'm willing to
But
talk
give them
about
one.
it.
Brian, what's
I made a
the
motion.
logic, as opposed to doing 1 shed and put 1
I'm
shed
not sure,
between
I'm
the
not
2
sure if it's,
fields?
I'm
And
not
they're
sure if it's
replacing
space
one.
restraint in there. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, did they, like, to not walk as far, or did you hear what that rationale, because I didn't see that meeting.
Where's the softball field, Cindy? Is that the one on 3A?
Yeah.
That-
So the baseball field is sort of behind the kindergarten building, the softball field is over by, by
Litchfield.
3A.
That's where the other.
Next to the
other
soccer field by the
team-
road.
Yes, yep.
They play
So
baseball there.
they're a good distance apart.
It's,
And we're replacing 1.
the shed is convenient,
No, that's a
definitely.
different one.
The one that's rotting,
That's a, yeah, well, they have a concession stand right there too, right? That's a softball field, right?
So they give us just 3 sheds on one piece, on that
Softball
piece
field,
of property that we have to maintain. We have to clean, paint, roof.
so is the one that's being replaced, the one that's right there next to the other baseball field?
Well, the only shed that I know that's there is between the soccer field and the baseball field.
Yeah. That's what I'm wondering.
And that's the one that's rotting out.
Is this for gym class or an extracurricular?
It wasn't clear.
It's gotta be for both.
Because if it's for an extracurricular.
No, Matt said that sometimes the people need the equipment and there's nobody at the school, so somebody has to come in and get it from the schools. So extracurricular.
And the other thing was, by leaving stuff there, bases get stolen, and they want to lock up the equipment,
And he followed that on with, you know how much a rake costs? Good rake is $60 or $70.
yeah. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 733, furniture additional, a reduction of $4,000 for a new line total of 0, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Aye. All right, we're going to do this, that sounded even. All those in favor, raise your hand.
That failed.
So it's 3-6-0, the motion fails. Anything else on page 13? No, page 12, I'm sorry, page 12.
Could I make a motion for 1 shed? on 733?
You can do whatever you want.
I would like to give them one shed.
All right, so there's a motion to reduce 733 furniture additional by $2,000. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Leaving a balance of 2,000. All right, further discussion?
I think it comes down to.
I think it's convenient. I mean, I've coached softball at Alvern, kids rec leagues, and the sheds are convenient, really is. At least give them one this year.
Well, even still, but how much are you storing, a rake, a dragnet?
No, there's stuff to it.
Bases. and-
Exactly, I mean, but the basics that you need aren't that much, it's what.
You haven't
I have some
logged
extra
stuff
space
down into
So that
the
I'm gonna use
fields.
it.
Yes or no?
Yes, no, I actually had to run to my fields in cleats in high school, so yes, I have dragged stuff.
Coached for many years.
All
I'm not
right.
gonna argue
That's
that.
just what I'm thinking. I
It's
said
also a want
one.
versus a need.
Yay or
And the
nay?
size, this is a
Does it?
64
It
square
was
foot.
it was a lot
structure.
versus a need in
Yeah?
a tight
You're
year.
not gonna be able to fit a lot in that building.
All right, so is there further discussion on
I'm giving
one
them at least
shed?
one.
What they want, is a want versus.
Giving
a
them
need.
one. Giving them some of what they want.
All right, hearing no further discussion. All those in favor of 733 furniture additional, a reduction of $2,000, leaving 2,000 in that line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passes 7-0. Any further motions on page 12?
Just a quick comment, you know, the kind of discussion we just had really would have been good to have when we had the people here. And that's the whole reason why we had them here.
And you know, and we do, we get into this every year, and that's why I was so glad, I forget now whether it was the last time or the
We were here till
before,
midnight both of
when-
those nights.
When Mr. Leckliter was
Right.
here, because, and that's why we've asked people to come back a second night, because you go through it, when you go home, you crunch the numbers, additional questions come up, and for example, when Mr. Leckliter came, he was able to answer some really good questions. If he had not been here,
He saved a teacher too.
he saved 2 teachers. So I really think, you know, it happens, you know.
We did
questions
have
come
that
up.
discussion though about the sheds
Yeah.
and the reasoning.
All right, I make a motion, 610 supplies, a reduction of $1,500, leaving $2,000. That is level funded. Is there a second?
What'd she just do?
Second.
It's
Sorry,
been
what
made
page
and
we on right now?
We're
seconded.
still on 12.
We're still on
Above
12. And my rationale for that was that we spent almost 1,500, 2013, we spent 314, so that still leaves a hefty $2,000 there.
To paint the one new 64 square foot shed.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, what line are you on?
610 at the top of page 12.
Okay.
The top,
The first one.
yep,
Supplies?
610.
610, okay.
yep. Level funding it to $2,000.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 610 supplies, a reduction of $1,500, leaving $2,000 in that line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it's 810, motion passes. Anything else on 12? Moving to 13,
Yeah, I'm
go ahead.
sorry, I didn't do this one yet. Did I? 4:30 power sweeping?
No,
Nice one,
you
huh?
have not.
Okay, so let me not make this one difficult. Line 430, I want to take from $11,550 and reduce that by $700.
Okay.
And I am putting specifically in the power sweeping line. So that brings it to $10,850, if my math is right.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, further discussion? I think we've had all the discussion we need. All right, all those in favor of 430, repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $700 for a new line total of $10,850, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So motion passes 810.
Now, I did a catch basin count on that item also. And I got 10.
Okay, do you want to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to cut that to, it's make it $500, so I'll cut it by $800.
Okay, the motion is a reduction of $800, making the new line total $10,050. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Same rationale as the others.
Alrighty. All those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of $800 for a new line total of $10,050, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So it passes 7-0. Any further reductions on line 12? I mean, on page 12? Page 13?
I have item 734 here too, 2 sheds, old field equipment, $4,000. I'd like to cut 734 by 1, $2,000.
All right, so a motion to cut 734, equipment additional by $2,000, leaving $4,500 in that line. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded. Further discussion?
So this is different, right? My last understanding for LMS was they're really sheds for use at GMS, correct, to store supplies and equipment.
Mhm.
These are sheds that are here at CHS for use at CHS.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do we have 2 sheds today?
No.
No.
These are brand-new add-ons.
Do we know which field we'd be getting them?
Ryan, do you recall what kind of equipment they want to store in here?
I think it's a lot of equipment. I mean, all I keep hearing is that they have such a lack of space for all the equipment. With new sports coming on, I mean, it's make it even more difficult.
I mean, when I can walk around Campbell High School and I will find all sorts of field maintenance equipment. The rakes and
Right.
all the power stuff that just lays out there all winter long. And my understanding, that's what this is all about.
And they've talked about that also. I don't know if it's for these particular sheds or not, or whether or not they would utilize a different shed and then move the stuff. But I know
I
they
did-
talked about that also, that they have equipment everywhere, and some of the equipment is where it shouldn't be.
I didn't get this as being athletic equipment per se. I got it as the field maintenance stuff that they have. It's all over the place out there. I mean, you can go out there and by the track and you'll see all the stuff they lay over the track so people don't walk on the track. That's all wrapped up and laying out there. All that stuff has to be put somewhere rather than just laying out all winter long.
That's my understanding.
You'd think you would put it in one central location, though, if that was really the need to build one central location on the property to store all that stuff.
Well, again, it's
So
proximity
is
to
an
where you use
8x8
it.
shed still gonna be enough room for that? I mean,
We don't know if
should
it's an 8x8 shed.
Yeah, well, looking at the dollar average, you're
You can-
almost left to assume that, and I haven't walked out there,
Any-
so maybe.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 734, equipment additional, a reduction of $2,000, leaving $4,500 in that line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Aye.
All right, we gotta do this again.
I think it's 4-4.
Can't be.
How many in favor of the line? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion fails. All right, so the line
I'm almost
stands.
satisfied with that after hearing Bill.
Any further items on page 13? Hearing none. 14. Hearing nothing on 14. 15. Sixteen. Seventeen.
let's look at 17. And it'll get me to my bottom line number. I went on 430 repairs and maintenance, the blacktop for the GMS playground area. I did take a look at that, and it is in bad shape, and it really should be replaced. And then I thought back at the town budget when we did that, and they have money in there to do the parking lot at the fire station as a separate warrant article. Okay? And I'm looking at this, I'm saying, the big item should be done, but why don't we do it as a warrant article? Okay, it's not unknown to do it that way. So what I would like to do is I propose reducing that to $1.
All right, 430 repairs and maintenance, a reduction of 47,379
$79.
for a dollar left.
I'll second that for
in it.
discussion.
Yeah, I have no doubt that it should be done. I mean, they tried to crack seal it, the cracks are 2 to 3 inches wide down there. Tough shape. And I firmly believe it was a separate warrant article that it would pass. So that's basically my rationale. We've done things like that way back. We used to put roofs on them as separate warrant articles, believe it or not. And I think this is a candidate.
So help me understand, is this the area where children
area.
play basketball and
Yeah.
that type of?
Yeah, it's fenced off, so, but it's in tough shape.
And just help me understand the size. Is it about the same area where a year or two ago we replaced the parking lot for about the same dollars in front of GMS?
I'd say that if you put them side by side, it's about the same square footage.
I bet you it's
You cut the
close.
parking lot in half.
Yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of wider, but.
Okay, so the cost isn't unreasonable, the 47,000.
I wouldn't even question.
No,
the
the-
cost.
Right, I'm just trying to think. Okay.
I was more looking at how we should position this as far as the budget
I
is
think it
concerned.
improves the likelihood of it getting done if you do it that way.
I'm sorry?
I said it improves the likelihood of it getting done, because you're
Yep.
not. people-
It's not going to be in the core
No,
budget.
yeah, it's a
Well,
vote.
that and people are likely to see, between soccer and everything, people see that area. There's a lot of exposure within the town, people will support that. And it's likely to get done if the budget fails, because the warrant article can pass and the budget can fail and it can still get done. Whereas if the budget fails with it in it, it does not get done.
Well, in the reverse, just so you have all
I
your
understand.
contingencies covered, if it fails and there ends up being unexpended funds, you cannot repair it, even if somebody donates it.
I understand, but you're like, if you keep it in the budget and the budget fails, you're in the same position.
That is the downside to that, Cindy, but it's also, we know where the no means no law came from. It also represents the will of the people.
Was that price a bid price?
I think it was
47?
estimated.
Yeah, he showed us an estimate on that, it's 2,369 square yards, and I did the estimate at my work, and that's
I think
a good
too,
price.
Yeah.
based on the last year's election and voting cycle, the people are willing to support warrant articles that are reasonable, that people understand where their money's going to. I mean, so
think
I don't.
that's true.
I don't underestimate the will of the people to support something like this.
My opinion, I'm very, very tough on anything new. New structures, new programs, new buildings, new anything, because of my next comment, which, once we have something, we're obligated to maintain it and should maintain it. So I'm very tough on anything new, but when we have it, it is clear we need that. I saw it, it's in bad shape, just like I supported the parking lot at that school. So, I mean, for that, I would support it in the budget. But to Bill's point, this one is so much higher, it might be tough. So I'm really torn on this one, quite honestly, because my belief is it should be in the budget, but I do understand that if we go to default, we all lose.
Well,
And-
if you go to
So
default, it's get done anyway.
this one I'm truly torn on, because I believe it should be in the budget. So I don't know how I feel on that right now, quite honestly.
And I look at it again from a holistic plan thing. And we also have a shade structure for 10,000.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
there too.
that's what I want to get to.
That's
Right.
another issue.
But I mean, if you're going to put that in the warrant, it should be wrapped in there.
No, they're two
Well,
different
no,
things.
one's maintaining. an
Yes,
existing
no, let's
facility.
stick with the playground
One's
area.
adding, but this
Yeah.
one, I think it's such a large item, I think people are exposed to it, they're willing to pass it, and improves the likelihood of it being
And
done.
just, you can't, this was on my reduction too, you have to be careful about reducing an item because you want to see it on a warrant article. That's not the budget committee's.
No, I'm just saying, in the same rationale,
Responsibility.
this is all in that same area.
So my rationale, this was on my reduction too, but my rationale was, going back to, there's a lot of things we need to take care of this year. Is this the year to do it? We just put brand-new fencing along that. We're gonna have to rip that fencing up
No, they
to
won't.
blacktop.
They won't.
They won't touch it.
So I just,
And that fencing was
on the other
minimal
side,
amount of
right?
money.
I just looked at it and said, again, if I had to pick and choose things for this year, or what can we put off to next year, I had this on my list as well, but for
I-
different reasons.
I think that would be the way I would vote to, I mean, look, if it went in a warrant, I would support it, but I would probably agree to take it out, and which means in my mind, I would have to support it next year, because, in the budget, because I'd be buying one more year in my mind and putting it off, but
And I agree, if it was in a warrant, I would support it too, because then you're not asking, because then people, it's an option.
Right.
And they're saying, you know what, this is more of a priority than the budget committee thought. But I just, again, trying to figure out what to do in 1 year and what to save,
So if
so.
I make it easier for you, this will be my bottom line reduction. We're taking this line.
All right.
Sunshades in.
Pardon?
If
Sunshade's
there's-
in.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of 430 repairs and maintenance,
I
a
know,
reduction
just
of
take care of his budget.
$47,379, leaving $1 behind, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it is 720, passes.
And I just want to repeat, if I have to, I'll save it for a member input. If it did come to warrant, I would support this warrant.
I will too.
And I would try and sell it to the voters, and I believe they'd go for it.
And I'll encourage the school board to put it on the wall.
All right, anything else on page 17?
We're still on page 17, huh?
Yep, still on page 17.
Who's going to do the next one?
I make a motion, line 450, shade structure, reduce that line to 0.
Second.
Been made and seconded, any further
My
discussion?
rationale, it's a new structure, and whether it's needed or not, I don't know. If it's a want, I don't know, but that's something in my world, you just, when you're building a new structure, you need to ask permission, because then you will have an affirmative that if, when the roof goes, or it rots out, or it needs to be painted, you have to support it, because they said yes.
Any further discussion?
What's the need? What's the justification for the need?
It's a
There's
good,
definitely no shade for the children.
and a hot sunny day.
But that's true on all the fields, on all the surrounding property, as well as LMS and CHS. There's no shade structures anywhere.
There's not.
There are some trees here.
There's not, but GMS is the only school that has recess.
My-
Actually, the
Boys
fifth graders
doing
have
that.
some recess.
And like that for years.
The,
The ozone layer, it's like,
Four and
The-
five months.
a couple of years ago, there was a committee that was very successful in raising funds for playground equipment. This may be something that they would want to resurrect that committee and fundraise for, is what I thought. There's no further discussion?
So, is this truly a district need, or is it a want? Is there a reason why this is the year for this item?
I think they said that somebody requested it, and so it got to them.
but, I guess it's both a request and a need. Again, there is no shade whatsoever for the children. I think Mr. Thompson, being new to the school, probably came to realize the lack of shade, and that's why he suggested it and put it in.
But have we had any issues that would be the result of lack of?
I guess I gotta ask how long is recess as well?
It's like half
Half
an
hour.
hour.
Half hour?
And most of their school year is probably during what, fall and winter months? Not like they're out in the summer. Recess.
They're out there when it's mighty hot at times.
Oh, I'm sure there are days.
If the
There's no doubt about
board
it.
feels strongly enough about it, there's a warrant process, or they can use alternative funds. But in my opinion, this is a want and not a need, and with the budget situation we're looking at, we need to focus on needs more than wants.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of 450 site development, a reduction of $10,600, leaving a line total of 0.
I'm sorry,
signify-
10,060.
$60.
60.
Yes.
Yep.
Taking it in the negative.
I put the 0 in the wrong place. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passes 8-0. 210, and that is, oh, geez, I had it right there. Page 18. All right, that.
So, on these modulars, right, is it just a continuous lease payment?
Say again?
Is it a continuous lease payment?
Yeah. We could have least purchased them years ago and didn't. And unless you got a new agreement coming up.
When,
Not with the agreement.
yeah.
Some more years.
I think there's 3-year renewal all the
Just
time,
keep
right?
rolling.
Do we know which year this is in?
It's a great
They're-
gig.
They're renewable. I mean, the contract, as I recall, is for a fixed period of years. It used to be 3 years, I think.
I think 3 years was the
But
number.
elsewhere, it said, year 2 of these payments, year 1 of this, so this doesn't indicate which year we're in.
Yeah, I don't recall where we are. on that.
Maybe we're past the initial
Is it
term, and now
called-
it's just ongoing, and now it's cancel at will. I mean, they've made their money on them, clearly.
Do they maintain them, or is that our job? So we have to do everything if something goes wrong in that heating, ventilating, whatever, where it's on us?
I think so.
Seriously? What happens if you stop paying?
They come take them.
If that's the case, that's good business.
All right, transportation is next. And it's basically the one page. Are there any motions?
Let me get, if you're ready, I'll get the ball rolling.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Line 519, transportation. I would move that from $519,980 to $420,260. Reduction of $99,720.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Okay, now, here's my rationale. The school board very nicely asked the question, can we go from 10 buses to 8 buses? And the administration agreed to look at it. They've asked for a student to do what they're supposed to do, and eventually they're going to come back with a proposal. There clearly are issues with going from 10 to 8. There's scheduling issues, there's all sorts of issues. My way of looking at it is if we take 2 buses out of the program, out of the budget now, and they can come back to us at the budget hearing with the results of whatever study's been done, and if they tell us, we really still need 10, I'll support putting it back in. If they say we can get by with 9, I'll support putting that back in. But I think we've got to have a situation here where we force the issue, at least, if not by budget hearing, at least by deliberative session. Because they've taken the initiative, I think it's a good initiative, and I think that should be reflected in the budget. That's the way I come at it. And
Further discussion?
I'm curious if there's a real issue with the school board or the superintendent with that type of approach.
We're still waiting to hear. The software to do that work yourself is $6,000. So we're at the timelines of first student. I believe Mr. Markowitz has negotiated with them. I mean, we have to take our data and dump it in and run the program and go.
Do you think it's feasible to come back by the time of budget hearing with a proposal?
So we're responsible for the software cost for students?
No, I say, if we wanted to do it ourselves, we would have to buy the software in order to run and do that analysis, and we don't think it's worth the $6,000 to find out. We would just have to wait a little bit longer until
First student does what they
first
do.
student does what they have to do.
So they'll
I've seen
do it
this, though.
for us at no additional charge, but we gotta wait for their
That's-
timeline.
That's what we asked for, yes.
Okay.
And I had half that, because I think that you can easily do with 1 bus. I'm not sure you could do with a reduction of 2 buses, so I had a reduction of
Yeah.
50,000.
And again, if we want, we can either make an amendment now, or we can wait for budget hearing when they've got some input from them. I'm open to anything. I just think that since they've taken the initiative, I think it ought to be reflected in the budget.
Calls the question in a way. It forces people to do something, take some action.
I think they're more likely to respond to a bigger reduction, wouldn't they?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, look, we need to make the number what it is. I mean, this is a mathematical equation as far as I'm concerned. So what the number is, I think this entire board, I don't want to speak for everybody, will support what it really should be based upon the analysis.
And the problem with predicting is you've got the same number of roads, the same number of schools, with decreasing student population, you may have fewer stops. You should have, because we have some stops for only 1 or 2 kids. But stops that used to be 6 kids are now 4.
Right.
So there's no real savings there. So you just don't know how much you're going to increase the cost or the length of time
But
for
do you know what
ridership.
the average run length is?
I'm sorry?
What is the average run length currently?
They run for 19 to about 25, 26 minutes in a run to pick up in the morning. GMS, there's some of them are 25, 26 now,
That is really good.
wow, start to finish.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of 519 transportation, in support of a reduction of $99,720, leaving $420,260 in that line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passes 801. 810.
Hopefully they'll find them.
Line, oh, that should raise a flag.
line 626,
Yep.
I move from 2,000 to $1.
Second that.
It's been made and seconded to 626 fuel, a reduction of $19.99, leaving $1 total in that line.
The benchmark where this kicks in is $3.63 a gallon.
Mm.
We've always had this clause in the contract,
Mhm.
never spent a penny on it.
Yeah, I don't ever recall it being spent, ever.
So just so I understand this fully, if gas that's protection in there for the bus company. If gas happens to go above 363, they have the right to charge us, what, the difference? Or it's a certain
By
formula?
each year it changes. You look at the contract.
But next year, fuel is projected to be
But
significantly below.
I agree. So my question is, this year or the year before, because it did go above 363, did they charge us?
It's a brand new contract.
Oh, it wasn't in the old contract?
Well, there was a rider in the old contract also.
But it's a different
It has been
figure.
in the contract. We really don't know.
It's
Yeah,
a,
it's at the, obviously, they choose.
they choose a figure that they
Right.
feel they,
I really don't want to call and ask.
And even at
Right.
that,
Okay, good point.
But in this case, with the price that they brought
Right.
in here and what has transpired and what we expect to see in the next year or so.
Yeah, and long term, at least for the year, I'm glad gas isn't gonna be that high.
Does that 363 include state gas taxes?
no, but we don't,
No, I know, so I'm saying, it's not really 363 then, it's 363 plus 16 cents or whatever. Is it-
that's the price that they have in the contract, doesn't matter.
Right, doesn't matter what goes into it. So it's
But right now,
So
the-
I'm saying, so when it says 363, it's when the market value is 363? Or is it when a nonprofit would pay 363?
And the prediction right now is for, the government prediction right now, the EIA.gov site
Yeah.
is $2.60.
Yes, it doesn't really, it's not even an issue.
No.
Right, and that factors in taxes though.
all right.
So take it out.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of line 626 fuel, a reduction of $19.99, leaving $1 in that line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
So passes 810. Any further reductions
Yeah,
on?
yeah.
$399 a day.
Line 519, I would move from $84,076 to $46,251.
Okay, there is a motion to reduce 519 transportation to 46,251.
Second?
It's been seconded. Let me find out what the reduction is. Crap.
It should be 375, right? That's right.
Is that what he's doing?
Yep.
I'm level funding.
Yep, okay. That makes it easy, thank you.
This is a very, very confusing account. And you've all got the little notes I threw out that look at what information I got from the school in terms of numbers of runs. We know what the cost of runs were. And there's just no way you can balance off theoretically what the budget should be and what we actually wind up spending. It just doesn't make any rational sense at all. Part of the problem this year, and it's a real problem, is the first student couldn't handle all that we wanted, and their costs were significantly higher per run than providers who are doing it significantly higher than first student. And so they got a problem this year. That's a problem that could occur any year. This is the first year we've had it where first student could not provide all of our students. Who knows what it'll be next year? Will they be able to handle it or not? If we reduce by 2 buses, maybe they can handle it. So that's a variable in there. There's something else going on there, that they've got to be doing some sort of consolidation or something or other. I know within the contract, if you have a run from Campbell to Nashua and then back to Campbell, that counts as 1 run as opposed to 2, if they can do it on a continuous. But if they have to go directly and then have no pickup to bring back, then it doesn't count. So that's a variable that's in there. And then lastly, we had an excellent discussion about what they're looking at in terms of the VOCAD itself, in terms of can we consolidate everything in Pinkerton or not. Sounds like a great idea. I'd be interested in how Dr. Cochran feels about it in terms of if it's something that's feasible for next year. And if it is, then that lets a lot of this problem go away in terms of what the cost is for transportation. So with all those things in there, I'm saying, honestly, I don't even think that today's budget is the right number. But to grab at anything, I said, let's level fund it. And that's why I came up with what I did. But I would be interested in what your thoughts are.
With respect to Pinkerton, the devil's in the details. You've got, and the board and I both asked some good questions when Principal Rothhaus and Director Callanan were there. It's not a matter of whether or not they have the programs, it's whether or not they have the programs you want and whether or not you can get the kids in the programs that we need. If you looked at the information that I had was that we had about 70% of our kids get accepted in Nashua. So the list of questions that we've generated to ask have the high school get some answers to includes, what are the class sizes now? What were we already know what students we have. CTE programs are 2-year program, right? This was taken as juniors and seniors. So we have, I think, 13 kids at Nashua now who are in year 1. So we have to make sure that all those kids can move to a 2-year program at Pinkerton. Is there space there? What's the historical likelihood of being able to get seats in our programs that we tend to request? Where's Pinkerton headed right now? We know that there are negotiations already with an MOU with Hooksett. So when you project potential Hooksett about 100 students, what would be left? So would we be in a situation where we sign an MOU with Pinkerton and get half our kids in there and be even worse off budget-wise? So that's where we are, and we have a student this year who's in year 1 of a program in Pinkerton who I would say that we're obligated to get there. But it's at a significant cost. So if the details work out and we can look at the projections and get the placements, then it could break well. And if not, we'll either have to decide between leaving some kids stranded or trying to find a chunk of change. But the cost of transportation has just skyrocketed the last couple of years, to the point that there are just some people who don't want the runs that we're trying to get. I mean, when I came here, you could make a phone call and get 2 quotes in one day. And now, it's...
And I think where I came apart was when I tried to rationalize what we're actually spending on these for the same number of runs, and it was like this. It just didn't make any sense.
The math does not work.
Yeah.
And I looked at the same information that you did, and there doesn't seem to be a correlation between stops and lakes and all of that stuff.
So
there's, to my knowledge, I'm in exactly the same situation as you are.
Yeah.
I can't really, I understand why we are where we are compared to because of the addition of Pinkerton, but why it was given the nature of the contract I'm surprised at how low our bills are. Let's just stop there.
Having mercy on us. Do we know what's the time frame you think for nailing down the Pinkerton issue?
Pinkerton opens registrations about the second week of January, and it's open for about 8 weeks.
And there's some really good analysis that we got from Jody Callanan, so.
I mean, it seems,
They
looking
can-
at it, it looks like a no-brainer, but
Yeah,
but at the same point, when can we get them to commit to?
Pinkerton, Nashua, you've got 4 90-minute blocks, and we can have to bus to any one of those and
Right.
back. And given the transportation time, it becomes problematic. Pinkerton has a policy of out-of-district students only coming in first period or third period. So they have an out-of-district group for the year 1 program and for the year 3 program. So they're understanding how much the cost of travel is starting to be prohibitive and trying to work with us. So we take that as a very good sign, the fact that they acknowledge that and, you know.
any further discussion?
Will we be able to put a good solid vote on this come January? I mean, it doesn't sound like
No, you're not.
it's gonna be a guess.
And there's all these numbers we're working with right now.
So,
We make
we're
a,
not giving them any leeway, no, we're just going right to level funding from last year.
Level fund is what they expected to spend this year if they hadn't gone into the box with first student not being able to provide the number of buses.
yeah, based on history, that's still a good number.
Yep, it's still high.
Registrations are up this year, though. We've gone up,
But that
I
doesn't,
think we're up to about 30 this year. We were up 23, 24, and the few years before that, we were in the 12 to 15
but
range.
that doesn't impact the number of routes you're running,
No.
which is the
It-
issue here.
You can have a full day's run with fewer than 30 kids. Once you get up to a full day's run, it doesn't matter how many kids you have.
Yeah.
So, but
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 519, transportation, a reduction of $37,825 for a new line total of $46,251, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passes 810.
an FYI, the longest morning bus run at GMS is bus 7, which has its first stop at 7:46 and arrives at GMS at 8:15. So if it's on time, the current run is 29 minutes.
That's reasonable. Yeah. All right, that is the,
I'd like you to thank Jody for being very responsive and sending us the information that we did with a very quick turnaround. Super, I'd like you to personally give her my thanks.
yeah, and a lot of
Very
good
good
detailed information. So that ends our budget voting for tonight.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, the audit services, I'm so sorry, it is there. And so that is under
This is under school board.
Audit.
school board,
Yep.
alrighty.
And audit services on page 2.
Audit
So, just to remind everyone on the committee, this is one that I've been asking for a contract, just to see what the contract says in terms. Come to find out that there is actually no contract. It was an email that we've received with an estimated quote for next year, which is less than the $18,285. There was a range provided to the committee, and that ranges from $14,500 to a max of $17,000. I would propose to reduce this line, I will propose to reduce this line by $1,285 to set it to $17,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded.
That doesn't
Further
account
discussion?
for- That doesn't account for the bound copies, though, do you?
There's still plenty of room.
All right.
Is that $1,200?
$1,285
Thank you.
for a new line total of $17,000. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of 331 audit services, a reduction of $1,285 for a new line total of $17,000, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Opposed?
Yes.
Do you oppose?
Say no.
It passes 810. All right.
Who did second?
Who seconded it?
Who seconded it?
I did.
Chris, thanks.
So that's 12,
What are we on right now?
85.
We
All right,
reduced audit services.
so if my math is
Oh, we gotta
correct,
do that now.
so don't hold me in case it's not.
According to the email.
Come on, it's not yet 11.
I
Well,
know,
yeah.
it should be fresh.
I'll get it to your
Talk
math.
something else.
The reductions to date are $692,002.
Now, that includes the transportation
That
reduction, right?
includes
Which
the,
might, some
that
might go
includes
back in.
everything up to the moment, assuming my math is correct. So, once I double check everything, I will send an email around to let everybody know where we are. All right, member input, new business. Yes, sir.
As long as Dr. Cochran is still here.
On that note,
No, I'd just like to comment briefly on the revenue projection that we got. That particular, not sure what to call it, whether it's a forecast, projection, or what it is. I know Steve was very sensitive about it. But the only purpose that serves is to allow us to come up with a tax rate impact to go on the warrant articles. The numbers that go in that, by and large, are not what are used when the tax rate is set in the fall, okay? So it's really an estimate of what we think it might be, so we can tell our taxpayers what the impact will be. And when Frank did it, he looked at some of the accounts like Medicaid and took an
Medicaid
average and said,
reimbursement
here's a guess. And
catastrophic aid.
great way to do it, okay? The one thing that is missing from that is fund balance, okay? And up until a couple of years ago, we always used to carry $200,000 in that particular line item, okay? I truly believe there's nobody sitting at this table that doesn't believe there'll be a fund balance next year. Okay? What the number is, well, remember, it's not just appropriation,
table.
it's revenue side also, okay? And, you know, in all the years, I've never seen it when we haven't had a fund balance, and I can't recall one less than 200,000, could have been, but I can't recall it. And point being, it doesn't impact what you finally use to set the tax rate, because when you finally set the tax rate, you know what the number is. So I look at that and I'm saying, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot by not including some number in there for fund balance, because when we tell the voters, here's the impact, we want to include that in there, so it mitigates to some degree the impact of the budget, which is true, it will be there. So you got, administration puts it together, school board approves it, we don't really say yay or nay on it, but we will have a chance to talk about that particular report. And I'd just like you guys to think about it and think, maybe it would make some sense, regardless how Frank feels, because Frank feels, I don't know what it is, so I can't put anything in there. I think you have something in there. I think you have a rationale that says you can have something in there just like you do for Medicaid or the other one. And it makes it all the better as far as putting the whole budget together. And if you put $200,000 in there, that's $200,000 we don't have to cut out of what you're talking about on the budget itself. So that's my 2 cents worth for you to think about.
And our next meeting, our review is warrants and revenues.
And when do we vote warrants?
That is our January meeting.
Gotcha.
January meeting, bottom line on everything.
Gotcha.
Whatever our final totals are, that's when we take those votes.
Okay.
So next week, we'll be voting on special services and curriculum, and that should pretty much bring us to be able to make a decision in January, whether there's any further reductions, whether what we've done already is enough, and if the school district has any changes, because that's kind of the reason why we did it is, and I haven't heard anything from the town. I know part of why we're taking our final votes on the town budget on January 6th is last year, after all was said and done, the town came back with a whole bunch of changes. So we've left it open so that if there's any changes, that's what's gonna happen on January 6th. If there are going to be, it'd be nice if we could get that ahead of time, so we have a chance to digest it and look at where the town budget is, so just so you know.
Do we have, when will we see the default budget?
Thank you.
Because that'll determine how
Town is done.
hard we,
A draft of the default budget you can find on your budget portal for the town. The school district actually had said, I thought this week, when we talked about it, it was like 2 weeks in the future, which brings us up to this week. So I don't know if that's something we can add to our agenda for Thursday.
I think the board's had, Mr. Burke, some very preliminary discussions at this point.
I'm sure we'll talk about it again on Wednesday. I can't,
So if there's any kind of conclusion, it'd be nice if we could have that discussion on Thursday.
if there is a conclusion.
The best case scenario, I really believe, is going to be a ballpark estimate.
It makes it really hard.
Why would you only have a ballpark estimate? It's pretty cut and dry.
it should be.
Well-
Because it's not done yet.
Yeah.
All right?
We do have something come out of Wednesday that we can let you know on Thursday.
All right, I am going to add it to the agenda then, under review. I'm going to add default. And it's, for us, it's informational purposes only. We have no say on what the default is. It's just informational purposes only. But it would be nice to have that as we plan for January 8th when we do our final voting on the school budget. Yes, thank you very much. Good night. All right, any other member input, new business? Hearing none, public input.
Bed vote on Thursday, right?
Sped vote is on Thursday, and curriculum. No public input.
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll see you Thursday.